Chapter 77. Since he grew up as an orphan, his mother and family became the most important and beautiful memories in Guhan's heart. When this memory was mercilessly insulted, then Guhan would retaliate without hesitation. If this was in real life, the person Guhan would beat up wouldn't dare say a bad word about his mother for the rest of his life. However, this was a game. Erasing a bunch of data wasn't a burden for Guhan at all. "What are you trying to do?" The old Taoist priest was probably frightened by Guhan's murderous aura. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. However, he still stubbornly said, "It's too late for you to apologize. I won't accept your apology. Hurry up and scram." Cough cough. Guhan grabbed the old Taoist priest's throat and locked his windpipe tightly with one hand. The old Taoist priest's breathing was blocked. He was like a pig about to be slaughtered. He grabbed Guhan's wrist with both hands and struggled continuously. "Military governor benefactor, you can't do this, you can't do this. Let's talk this out." Refinement panicked. He hurriedly pulled on Guhan's clothes and tried to persuade him. "Master of refinement, I'm going to kill him." Guhan's hand shook and was shaken a few meters away by refinement. "I don't care if you agree or not. I'm going to kill him. If you have any objections, then leave this place and go die outside." At this point, Guhan looked at the young Taoist priests who were ready to make a move. "You guys are the same. If you want to stop me, then be prepared to die with this martial granduncle of yours. It's just a dungeon. At worst, we can just start over again." Although the Taoist priests didn't understand what a dungeon and starting over meant, it was obvious that he looked down on them and didn't care about their lives. Compared to their own lives, the life of an old man who was about to die was nothing. A few hot-blooded Taoist priests wanted to rush out to save him. However, they were held back by the people next to them. They secretly advised, "Don't go against that demon. When we get to Yangjing City, it's not too late to complain to the government." Unfortunately, these Taoist priests did not know that when Guhan left this world, they would be formatted into a bunch of data streams. Guhan grabbed the old Taoist's neck and walked out of the back door of the Skyward Palace. After walking a dozen meters out of the door, there was a cliff that was thousands of meters high. "You. What do you want?" The old Taoist struggled and asked with difficulty. "Nothing much, I just want to throw you down so that you can complain to my mother about my upbringing." Guhan replied coldly. After that, he let go of the old Taoist's neck. However, the old Taoist didn't fall down. Instead, he sat on the edge of the cliff. The old priest didn't run. Instead, he sat there without moving and laughed out loud. "Kid, interesting. Since you want to kill me, why did you save me from the sutra depository just now?" "I'm saving you because your life is valuable. I'm killing you because you're despicable," Guhan said coldly. "Ha ha ha ha, Master said that one day I would die because of my stubbornness. I thought Master was lying to me. My senior and junior brothers have all left, and I'm the only one who managed to survive. I didn't expect Master's words to come true in the end. Kid, if I really do see your mother when I go down, do you want me to pass a message to her for you?" "You." Hearing the old Taoist's suicidal words, Guhan almost kicked him down. However, Guhan's feet were suspended in mid-air. After waiting for a long time, he said, "Tell her that Han is doing well outside. Tell her not to worry. No need for you to do anything. I'll go down myself." The old Taoist cupped his hands. "If there's a chance, I'll definitely pass it to her." With that, he leaped up and disappeared among the clouds. "I'm going crazy. I'm just an NPC. How can I run into the underworld?" Ji Han mocked himself and walked back to where he came from. System notification: 1 survivor has died. Remaining survivors, 754. Total number of dead survivors, 1. When Guhan returned to the Palace of Heaven, the atmosphere in the Palace of Heaven was instantly different. The Palace of Heaven, which had always been very noisy, was now terrifyingly quiet. Almost all the survivors had witnessed the scene of Guhan capturing the old Taoist and killing him. Their fear of death made them not dare to say a word. They were afraid that this demon would kill them too. If they knew that Guhan could only kill 3 people at most, they wouldn't be as nervous as they were now. The way the remaining Taoists looked at Guhan was completely different from before. Before, their gazes were filled with gratitude and respect. Now, their gazes were filled with hatred and anger. I killed one of you, but I saved 744 of you. Guhan glanced at the entire palace of heaven. Do you all hate me so much? Do I take saving you as a matter of course? Guhan's heart surged with sorrow. There was nothing more in the world than this. The hatred of taking away $1 from someone was far greater than the kindness of giving someone $100. Brother military governor, Little Chue supports you. At that moment, Little Chue, whose life had been saved by Guhan, broke free from his parents' restraint and jumped into Guhan's arms. That grandpa is so scary. Little Chue supports you, uncle. Thank you. Guhan kissed Little Chue's face and returned her to his anxious parents. Then, he strode out of the palace of heaven. Guhan understood that there was no need for him to be entangled with a bunch of data. Outside the palace of heaven, the battle was still going on. However, the main force of the battle had changed from the 3 sword ladies to Guhan. In the next hour, 90% of the Yuan coup that appeared were killed by Guhan. Guhan vented all his dissatisfaction on these unlucky Yuan coup. This made Shui Han and the other sword ladies feel very relaxed. They only needed to kill a few that slipped through the net. When Guhan killed the last goblin knight, there was only an hour left before the reinforcements from Yangjing City arrived. Guhan knew that the real enemy that he needed to deal with was about to arrive. The first to appear on the summit of Wudong Mountain was a patchwork monster. It was a type of undead monster. It was huge, about 5 meters tall and 4 meters fat, just like a football. It was hard to imagine how it could climb up the majestic Wudong Mountain with its size. Yuan Ku name, Patchwork Monster. Level, Ghost Level. Secondary World, Western Magical Beasts. Entry Dungeon, all Western Magical Beasts faction dungeons. Health points, 2 stars. Attack, 1.5 star. Agility, ½ star. Demonic power, none. Abilities, the giant sickle and iron hook in its hands, as well as the plague that it releases all over its body, are its lethal weapons. Ultimate move, mince, plague, self-destruct. Introduction, an important unit in the Western Magical Beasts faction. It is made up of the broken corpses of various creatures stitched together by necromancers. Because it has been treated with a large amount of preservatives, the patchwork monster always emits an unpleasant smell. Because it is a living thing, the patchwork monster does not feel any pain. It is not a big deal to have 1 or 2 pieces of flesh cut off. Because of its huge size, its health points are very high. Its defense is also very high, and it is often at the forefront of the battle to take all kinds of damage. Although it is not very smart, its iron hook is very accurate. It can hook the enemy into its body and then use poison to consume the enemy's life. The sickle in its hand is a little clumsy, but its damage is very high. 1 hit can take away half of one's life. Ah, what a disgusting monster. It had to be said that the patchwork monster had a huge advantage that was not recorded in the handbook. Its extremely disgusting body was something that most women could not bear. Even the powerful famous swordswoman, King Yu, upon seeing the patchwork monster, was so disgusted that she bent over and retched, losing half of her battle strength. King Yu was like this, not to mention Shui Han, who directly vomited on the ground. Only the silent Yu Lingjian did not feel any discomfort. On the contrary, she seemed to be eager to try. King Yu, you go and deal with it. Guhan did not care about King Yu's disgusting body and ordered, the other swordswomen, do not interfere. Let King Yu deal with it alone. If Guhan did it himself, the patchwork monster would not be enough. Apart from the fact that its health was too high, which wasted a lot of time, it was not difficult at all. However, this patchwork monster that did not pose much of a threat was also a rare target. It was the best training target for King Yu. Okay. King Yu knew that Guhan wanted to train himself and did not want to show any fear in front of Guhan. She resisted the disgust in her heart, raised her King Yu sword, and slashed at the patchwork monster. Hey, what's that corpse sewn on its stomach? Why does it look like a woman's upper body? And it's an upper body without a head. The pair of oppies on the corpse are still flowing with disgusting green corpse fluid. King Yu could not hold it in and vomited. Seeing the enemy vomit in front of him, the patchwork monster did not hold back. He hooked the hook in his hand onto King Yu's waist and pulled her towards him. At the same time, the patchwork monster's stomach opened up like a man-eating flower. King Yu was hooked into the patchwork monster's open stomach. I shouldn't die, Guhan muttered to himself with some confidence. Chapter 78. Oh no, big sister King of Yu was eaten by Yuan Ku. Sword Maiden Shui Han exclaimed. She picked up her long sword and planned to save King of Yu. Although King of Yu used the aura of a superior sword maiden to suppress her from time to time, as a fellow sword maiden, she definitely wouldn't stand by and watch her comrades die. It's fine, don't go up. Just as Shui Han took a step forward, she was pulled back by Guhan. Guhan didn't even look at the stitched monster and said indifferently, "Don't worry about King of Yu, that stitched monster can't eat people." It only swallowed him for 5 seconds. Indeed, after 5 seconds, the stitched monster seemed to burp. Its stomach opened up again and it spat out King of Yu. From the data, King of Yu only lost some shield energy and was hit by an insignificant plague buff. He didn't receive any fatal damage. However, from the outside, King of Yu was completely destroyed. The small leather armor on his body was in tatters. All sorts of organs and vegetable leaves stuck to King of Yu's body. There was also a large amount of white viscous liquid covering King of Yu's entire body. It felt like a scene from a movie from 1,000 years ago. It was just similar. If we want to judge how angry a girl is, we can observe her OP. If her OP is calm and doesn't change, then she is not angry. If her OP starts to move up and down, then she is a little angry. If her OP starts to shake up and down like a seesaw, then it means she is in a rage. If her OP starts to vibrate like an electric motor, coupled with an inexplicable snort, then let me give you a friendly reminder. Hurry up and find a washboard to kneel down on. Oh, and remember to protect your face. Well, King of Yu was currently in a rage. Not only the OP, but his entire body seemed to have turned black. Ha 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 ha, you dare to insult this king like this. If this king doesn't kill you, how can I rule over this vast country of you? While speaking, King of Yu's Go-Gen sword's tip emitted specks of starlight. It's over, King of Yu is going to use a skill. Guhan's heart skipped a beat. He had calculated everything and missed this. Although he had specifically warned King Yu not to use his skills, the humiliation he had suffered in the stitched monster's stomach had clearly caused King Yu's fury to erupt. Forget it. Let her be. Guhan thought about it and decided not to stop Yu Wang from using her skills. It wasn't good to hold back her anger and let her vent. As Guhan thought about this, he prepared King Yu's skill. He didn't shout out the name of King Yu's skill. He just stabbed the stitched monster with the tip of his sword. Yu Country Genuine consumes 1% durability and 3000 sword cheese to push a target 1 kilometer away from you. Cooldown, 15 seconds. The moment the skill was released, the stitched monster was shot out like a cannonball. After moving a distance of 1 kilometer, it fell down the cliff. Needless to say, in a place like Wudong Mountain, Yu Wang's Yan Yuan's basic skill had directly transformed into an invincible sure-kill skill. In this world, there weren't many mountains with a diameter of 1 kilometer. He's dead. Seeing the stitched monster fall down the cliff, King Yu didn't react. He pinched his face in disbelief. It wasn't until the various mucus on his body was sucked away by the dimensional vortex that King Yu confirmed that the stitched monster was dead. This king succeeded in taking revenge just like that. King Yu was wondering if the stitched monster was dead. On the other side, Shui Han started to doubt his life. He was sent flying 1 kilometer away. Such a terrifying fact almost made Shui Han's worldview explode. Even Yu Ling, who had been very calm and expressionless, was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. Imagine the expression of a 2-meter-tall giant girl who couldn't close her mouth. You're not allowed to use skills later. Guhan walked to King Yu's side and smacked King Yu's head without hesitation. Despicable person. You actually dared to hit this king's head. King Yu turned his head angrily and wanted to take revenge on Guhan. However, he discovered that Guhan's face was terrifyingly pale. "Hey, despicable person, what happened to you?" King Yu felt that he might have done something bad. "It's nothing much. I just used up too much sword essence. I feel like my body has been hollowed out." Guhan didn't know that he had said a famous advertisement line from 1,000 years ago. Guhan was speaking the truth. The sword essence in his body had indeed been hollowed out. King Yu's skills were very powerful. They were dozens of times stronger than the skills of ancient sword ladies. With one move, he easily killed the ghost Yuan Ku stitched monster. If Shui Han had to deal with it, he probably wouldn't be able to defeat this stitched monster even with half his life. But at the same time, King Yu's skills consumed a terrifying amount of sword chi. A basic skill consumed 3,000 points of sword chi. Guhan only had 5,050 points of sword chi. King Yu's one skill would consume a large portion of Guhan's sword chi. Unfortunately, King Yu was a famed sword lady. Only famed sword wielders could use a sword lady. For famed sword wielders, they had at least 10,000 points of sword chi and 100,000 points of sword chi. It was more than enough for King Yu to use 3,000 basic skills. But for Guhan, a basic skill consumed half of sword chi. The advanced skills and ultimate skills consumed tens of thousands of sword chi. Guhan was an ancient sword wielder. If he wanted to control a famed sword lady's true power, he still had a long way to go. Then what do we do? Seeing how weak Guhan was, King Yu couldn't help but feel guilty and sad. Don't worry, the next wave should be the spirits. There's no need for high-intensity battles. It's just a bit of brain power. Guhan paused and gave a new order. King Yu, Yu Ling, you two continue to guard outside. Later, there will be a small group of Yuan Ku attacking. Shui Han, come with me into Skyward Palace. Me? Shui Han looked at Guhan in disbelief. You want me to go in with you? Get this straight, I'm not your sword lady. Why should I go in with you? Wait. King Yu heard this and became unhappy. Shui Han is right. Although I don't want to admit it, I am your sword lady. If there's anything, I will do it. What does it have to do with Shui Han? Ji Yu Han frowned when he saw that the two sword ladies were not cooperating with him at all. He shouted at Yuan Kong, who was hiding behind him. Yuan Kong, let me borrow your aqua frost. Are you willing to use it? Yuan Kong will listen to military governor's orders. Shui Han, military governor, is trying to save everyone's lives. His orders are my orders. You just need to listen to military governor. Yuan Kong decisively sold Shui Han out. Shui Han was so angry that his nose became crooked. Meet, just this once. Don't even think about ordering me around in the future. Ji Yu Han agreed. The next person he had to deal with was his sword lady, the King of Yu. Considering that he had finally eased up his relationship with the King of Yu, Ji Yu Han decided to deal with the King of Yu in a gentler way. Be good. King Yu, listen to me, don't make trouble. Guhan said too much, as if he was persuading his lover. It almost made Shui Han's gums sour. You. This king. Forget it. King Yu's face was extremely red. He babbled for a long time. In the end, he was unable to resist Guhan's gentleness and was defeated, just this once. Don't leave me behind next time. After Ji Yu Han left the Palace of Heaven, the room returned to its noisy state. The cries of children, the screams of women, and the curses of men were all connected together, ringing out like a ball. Quiet. Everyone, please quiet down. Yuan Kong, who returned to Palace of Heaven with Guhan, saw this scene and immediately shouted to persuade everyone to quiet down. Unfortunately, it was useless. Yuan Kong looked at Guhan helplessly, indicating that he was helpless. Guhan sneered, picked up a small incense burner, and threw it at the center of the crowd. Who? Do you want to kill someone? What if it hits someone? In the Palace of Heaven, there was a hubbub among the crowded crowd. At the place where the small incense burner landed, several survivors who were almost hit jumped up and wanted to curse. As a result, they found that Ji Yu Han was staring at them coldly, and they immediately became listless. The rest of the survivors also noticed Ji Yu Han at this time, and immediately became silent. The whole scene was silent. Sorry, it's a bit rough to make you quiet down, but it's very useful. Guhan curled his lips and walked to the center of Palace of Heaven. I'm here to tell you something. There will be a group of Yuan Ku attacking later. They are invisible and can't be detected, so I can't stop them from entering Palace of Heaven. What? Yuan Ku will come in? If he comes in, what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? Guhan's words caused another commotion among the survivors. These Yuan Ku have no other ability but one. They can possess your bodies, control your bodies, and make you kill the people around you. As soon as Ji Yuhan finished speaking, the originally densely packed Palace of Heaven miraculously loosened up, and more than half of the area was empty. These survivors had already formed a family unit, and were just leaning on each other, vigilantly looking at the others around them. Don't be afraid, everyone. I have a way to deal with these Yuan Ku, as long as you listen to my orders. Chapter 79. On the peak of Wudong Mountain, 5 invisible and soundless specters quietly appeared. After they floated to the top of the mountain, they stayed for a short while. After some detailed communication, they flew toward Chaotian Palace. Of course, specters couldn't speak. They communicated through a very mysterious wave. I'll translate the general meaning for you. Spectre A, sisters, I smell the scent of living people. Spectre B, but there are 2 annoying sword maidens guarding there. Spectre A, it's okay, they can't find us. We just need to rush in, control those fragile human bodies, and make them kill each other. It's not difficult at all. Spectre C, but we can't come out after entering the human bodies. In this case, we can kill at most a dozen people before we get killed by the rest of the humans. Isn't that certain death? Spectre A, but we killed more than a dozen humans. Spectre C, but we'll die? Why are we willing to sacrifice our souls to kill more than a dozen humans? What good will it do us to kill more than a dozen humans? Spectre A, although what you said makes sense, I also don't understand why we have to kill more than a dozen humans. But my body can't help but want to rush over to kill people. Sisters, let's kill. Just like what Spectre A said, the 5 specters easily passed through the defense line formed by King Yu and Yu Ling outside. They didn't even have to walk through the gate of the Palace of Heaven and directly passed through the wall. Sure enough, in the Palace of Heaven, countless humans were sitting on the ground and chatting happily. They didn't even notice that the specters had broken in. Spectre A, sisters, everyone split up and find your own targets. After controlling their bodies, listen to my command and move together to kill the humans around you. The 5 specters quickly split up and began to find their own targets. It was very particular for specters to find targets to control. First of all, strong men couldn't be chosen. Their bodies were full of blood essence and yang energy. It was difficult for specters like specters to control these strong bodies in a short period of time. In this way, when the other party resisted, they would foam at the mouth, talk slanderously, jump around randomly, and so on. These symptoms were similar to epilepsy, and it was very easy to be discovered by the solid cold. Moreover, the yang energy of these strong men would also cause great harm to the specters. Especially those 28 Daoist priests. They practiced martial arts every day, so their qi and blood were as strong as a bull. They could not be touched at all. Secondly, the elderly and children could not be chosen because their bodies were too weak. Perhaps they could be of some use in the beginning of the ambush, but once the humans reacted, they would definitely be hung up and beaten. In that case, the best choice would be those young human women. Although their physical strength was much worse than that of strong men, it was enough. That's her. Ghoster very quickly chose such a target. It was a beautiful girl around 17 or 18 years old. She was surrounded by 4 or 5 hooligans who were trying to please her. It was a tragicomedy of a goddess and a spare tire. A 17 or 18-year-old girl's mind was basically empty except for love and love. To Ghost A, there was no difficulty in controlling her. In less than 3 seconds, the girl's original consciousness was suppressed by Ghost A and trapped in the depths of her mind. Now, Ghost A had completely taken over this body. Yoruo, look. This is the morning glory I found in the back mountain. I heard from the military governor that morning glory is completely extinct outside. This is the last one in the world. I'll give it to you. An honest-looking young man raised a morning glory and said to the girl possessed by Ghost A in a flattering manner. Stop bullshitting. It's everywhere in the back mountain and it's extinct. How dare you say that? Another young man pushed away the honest-looking young man and raised a small mirror fragment in his hand. Good sister, this is my mother's family heirloom, the chaotic sky mirror. This is one of the few mirrors in our Wudang mountain. I stole it from my mother and gave it to you. I hope you like it, Sister Yoruo. That's not good. Look at me. The 4 or 5 young men surrounded the girl named Yoruo who was possessed by Ghost A and tried their best to please her. This gave Ghost A better idea. Sister, control complete. Sister, suppression complete. Very soon, the other 4 specters also sent messages. They had already controlled the targets they had chosen and were ready to attack the humans around them at any time. Don't be anxious. Ghost A sent a telepathic message to temporarily calm her sisters down. I have a fun idea. Let me play with it first. In the first few years of the game's server, the Wudang Peak Instance Dungeon was a huge difficulty. This was because the players had no way to deal with the second last wave of attacks from the spirits. The time when the spirits entered Skyward Palace changed randomly. The target that they chose to possess also changed randomly. Moreover, the process of their possession was silent and there was no movement. The players had no way of knowing which survivor was possessed by the spirits. With the strength of a single player, it was impossible for them to watch over the actions of more than 700 people. When 5 spirits attacked at the same time, the players could not attend to one thing and lose sight of another. Even if they were lucky enough to block one spirit, they could not control the other 4 at all. In the first few years, the first wave of spirits could not be defended against. As long as it came to this wave, there would definitely be survivors who would die under the sneak attack of the spirits. No one could even get an SS rating, let alone an SSS rating. As time passed, there was finally a talent who specialized in electromagnetic waves, who found a way to discover the spirits. This player specialized in electromagnetic waves and was very interested in the antique communication system of Yangjing City from hundreds of years ago. When he had nothing to do, he would study this communication device. At some point, he suddenly realized that the communication device was emitting a strong static noise. This was a very unusual phenomenon. Without the interference of other electromagnetic waves, the communication device would not emit static noise. However, they were now at the peak of Wudang Mountain, and it was also the end of the world where humans were all holed up. How could the communication device suddenly receive such a strong electromagnetic wave interference? Just as the player was about to study it carefully, the spirits suddenly began to attack. After more than 10 survivors died, the players were able to suppress the spirits one by one. Then, in a flash of inspiration, he understood all the problems. Long before the apocalypse, research had shown that spirits really existed. However, they did not exist in the form of a physical body. Instead, they existed in the form of electromagnetic waves. In a sense, the human body was actually very similar to a robot. The human brain was the central processing unit. The various commands issued by the human brain were connected through the nervous system in the spine and controlled the movements of all the human organs and muscles in the form of microelectric currents. Therefore, some scientists speculated that when the human body died, their souls did not die. The electric currents in the brain would still be active for a considerable period of time before they died completely. It was like a capacitor. The 2 ends of the capacitor lost the supply of energy, but there would still be a considerable amount of electronic activity in the middle of the capacitor. Of course, under normal circumstances, the electrical activity in the brain of a normal dead person would slowly dissipate after a period of time. However, if the dead person did not die an abnormal death, but had died of torture, beheading, car accident, murder, or had suffered great humiliation before death, then the electrical current in their brain would be very active before death. Therefore, before they died, their brain electricity was very active, more than 100 times higher than that of a normal person. After such a person died, the electricity in their brain would be very difficult to disappear. If there was some external stimulation such as thunder and lightning, this person's brain electricity would form a higher level of brain electromagnetic wave, which would detach from the dead person's brain and become a ghost or a ghost in humans' eyes. This brain electromagnetic wave was like a television signal that contained a lot of image information. Once it invaded the brain of another person, the memory of the ghost would suddenly be inserted into the brain of the person, giving the feeling that they had seen a ghost. In other words, the spirit was actually a very complicated type of strong electromagnetic wave. The communication system that relied on electromagnetic wave to communicate would naturally be disturbed by the electromagnetic wave of the spirit and produce a rustling sound. Later, the player published his discovery on the forum and even published a simple modification method of the communication device. His post immediately attracted the interest of many players. After some tests, as expected, after a simple modification of the communication device, it could detect the arrival of the spirit. Then, some players took a step further and found a way to determine the distance between the spirit and the communication device based on the volume, pitch, frequency, and other details of the sound. This way, the players could take precautions against the spirit in advance, and the number of deaths caused by the spirit wave plummeted. Later on, based on this discovery, the council developed a spectre detector, which made it difficult to defend against in battle, and could only be destroyed by the Sword Lady's exorcism abilities. It became less troublesome to deal with. The first player to publish his discovery was also awarded great merits by the Spirit Detection Device He became one of the few people who relied on their own efforts to leave the commoner and become a citizen. There was too much to talk about, so we continued to return to Guhan's side. "It's coming." Guhan, who was sitting quietly on the ground, suddenly said. At the same time, the communication device on the ground began to rustle. After receiving Guhan's order, Shui Han immediately grasped the hilt of his sword tightly and looked nervously at the crowd around him, which didn't seem to have changed. Guhan closed his eyes and kept listening to the hoarse sound of the communication device, trying to determine the location of the 5-ghost Yuan Ku. Chapter 80. If you guys really like me, then prove it to me. Yu Ruo smiled faintly. Her lustful eyes glanced at the 4 youths who were staring at her with eyes that seemed like they were about to spit fire. What the 4 young men didn't know was that as Yu Ruo spoke, waves of electric waves were constantly emitted, affecting their brains. Yu Ruo likes hot-blooded men. These people are all bad guys who want to harm Yu Ruo. Help Yu Ruo kill everyone in the surroundings. Yu Ruo will like whoever kills the most people. Yu Ruo will have sex with that person. As soon as Yu Ruo's voice fell, all the youths seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their eyes were bloodshot and their fists were clenched tightly. They could not wait to kill everyone in the surroundings. This was also because Ghost A's realm was relatively low. He was only able to barely control the 4 hot-blooded youths by using the other party's love for him, words, electromagnetic waves, and many other methods. If Ghost A's realm was higher, reaching the level of a flood dragon, Yuan Ku, then he could control all the mortals in an instant with just a glance. Very good. You are all hot-blooded men that Yu Ruo likes. Later, when Yu Ruo wails, you guys will immediately. Yu Ruo lowered her head and softly instructed the 4 foolish youths on the plan. What should we do immediately? A voice suddenly asked. Immediately pick up the swords in your hands and slit everyone's throat. Yu Ruo said gloomily. Wudong Mountain might lack many things, but it did not lack swords. Apart from the thousands of famed swords in the armory, every household had their own ordinary iron sword. This was a tradition that had been formed since the apocalypse 200 years ago. At the most crucial moment, only one could protect oneself. Wait. There's something wrong with this voice. Yu Ruoshin suddenly looked up and saw a fierce-looking young man with a face full of scars standing behind the 4 young men. Yu Ruoshin felt that something was wrong and immediately yelled out, "Hurry up and kill the people behind you." The 4 youths heard Yu Ruo's order and immediately turned around to catch Guhan. However, Guhan's movements were faster than the 4 of them. 4 knife-hand strikes landed on the 4 young men's Fengkai acupoints. In an instant, the 4 young men fainted and lost consciousness. 1,000 years ago, there were a lot of people who wanted to test it out. They wanted to test whether striking the temple with a knife could knock someone unconscious. Therefore, after a large number of experiments, these people announced that knocking people unconscious with their palms was completely nonsense and impossible to achieve. In fact, these experimenters had made a mistake because they had knocked on the wrong place. Most of the experimenters had knocked on their own temples to verify it. What a joke! Knocking on the temples was a fatal place. Once the person knocked unconscious, they would basically be dead. The one that could really knock someone unconscious was the Fonkai point. The author guarantees that as long as you use enough strength and knock on the Fonkai acupoint of an ordinary person, you will basically be able to knock them unconscious. As for the location of the Fonkai acupoint, I won't tell you, lest you find someone close to you to do the experiment and make me take the blame. Ruo was so frightened by Guhan that she took 2 steps back. She could feel the unique energy of a sword wielder from Guhan's body. She knew that she had been exposed to the sword wielder. How did you discover me? Ruo asked in disbelief. It's impossible for you to discover me. My possession is flawless. Guhan snorted coldly and ignored Ruo's question. He took out a rope that Yuan Kong and the rest had prepared from his pocket and tied Ruo's limbs and body tightly. Then, he casually threw her to the ground. Once a spirit possessed a mortal, it was like a prisoner in a cage. It was very difficult for them to come out. For a weak spirit like Spirit A, she could not come out even if she wanted to. Therefore, as long as the host of Spirit A was tightly bound, Spirit A would basically be useless. It would take a long time to eliminate the spirits. Considering that there were still 4 spirits lurking in the crowd, Guhan decided to capture all the spirits and eliminate them together to prevent any accidents. Also, to answer Spirit A's question, the electromagnetic waves she used to charm the 4 idiots were too strong. It was so strong that the noise from the communication device was about to explode. If Guhan still could not locate her, he might as well kill himself with a piece of tofu. However, thanks to Spirit A, her loud noise completely covered the waves from her 4 sisters. After the possession was completed, the electromagnetic waves were reduced to the lowest level due to the protection of the human body. It was impossible to determine the location of the 4 spirits from the noise from the communication device. Ji Han seemed to be in a daze as he looked around, trying to find the location of the remaining spirits. Spirit A, who was tied up, noticed the change in Guhan's expression. She immediately sent a message to the rest of the spirits. Sisters, this sword wielder can't locate you now. Don't act rashly. I'll attract the sword wielder's attention later, then you guys can take action. Haha, stupid sword wielder, you won't be able to locate the rest of us Spirit. Spirit A began her plan to attract Guhan's attention. She purposely said to Guhan in a loud voice, "Let me tell you, we have a total of 400 people here. Half of the people here are already under our control. Hurry up and untie me, then I'll let our people retreat and let you go." Spirit A rambled on. It seemed like this was her way of attracting Guhan's attention. Do you think I can't locate them? Guhan looked at Spirit A with a face full of mockery. Spirit A suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness. It's over, this is bad. Spirit A only heard Guhan suddenly open his mouth and shout, "Comrades, it's been hard on you." What? What happened? Should I answer serving the people next? The other 4 spirits who were watching Guhan's actions in the crowd had the same question in their minds at the same time. Then, something magical happened. When all the survivors heard this, it was as if they had heard a fatal sound. In just a few seconds, they immediately fell to the ground without any hesitation. Even if they knew that they would be hurt if they fell, they still didn't hesitate and fell to the ground without any hesitation. The scene was very obvious now. Everyone fell to the ground. Only the 4 women, Guhan, Shui Han, and a group of Taoist priests were still standing on the ground. Without a doubt, the target of the 4 spirits' possession was instantly exposed. Why is it like this? Spirit A wailed in her heart. She didn't expect her companions to completely expose the target of their possession before they could do anything. She couldn't understand why everyone fell to the ground when Guhan said, "Comrades, it's been hard on you." Of course, Spirit A didn't know that at the end of chapter 78, Guhan told everyone to immediately fall to the ground when he shouted, "Comrades, it's been hard on you." If anyone didn't listen to the command and still stood on the spot, he would get rid of them together with Yuan Ku. This was also the reason why these survivors were not afraid of getting hurt and fell to the ground directly. Do it. Spectre A, who had a bad feeling in her heart, decided to take action immediately. While the group of Taoist priests were still a distance away from her sisters, she would immediately kill the humans around her. Killing one was one, killing 3 of her would be considered revenge. Wait, why did she think that killing 3 was considered revenge? Okay. These spirits touched the scabbards on their waists at the same time, planning to draw their swords to kill. This was a very good idea, but here came the problem. Why was her scabbards empty? Idiot. Since this crazy military governor asked us to lie down in advance, why didn't he ask us to hand over our weapons in advance? The people lying on the ground muttered to themselves. If it wasn't for the fact that they had handed over their weapons, they wouldn't have lied down so obediently. It's too late. Don't care about anything else, use the spirit blade directly. Ghost A was like a mad tiger. The ghost blade was the ultimate skill of the ghosts. It attached a strong electromagnetic wave to its hand and then hit the human's brain. It could instantly destroy the brainwave system and cause the human who was hit to die. However, the spirit blade would consume a lot of the electromagnetic waves of the spirit itself. A spirit could only attack twice. After 2 attacks, it would disappear and turn into ashes. At the same time, mortals who were possessed by the spectre would also die together with the spectre. This could be considered a complete human bomb skill. The 4 spirits listened to the order and raised their hands without hesitation. Electric sparks could be vaguely seen flickering between their palms. If they really hit the heads of the people around them, 4 survivors would die instantly. Guhan's SSS rank would be completely useless. However, Guhan didn't panic at all because everything was going according to plan. As soon as the 4 spectres used their spectre blades, they felt their legs go soft. Then, they discovered to their horror that they had lost control of their bodies. Their eyes closed, and they fell to the ground in an instant. At this moment, the Daoist priests with ropes in their hands swarmed forward. In just a few moves, they had tied up the 4 young girls like Spectre A and carried them to Jiu Han's side, placing them side by side with Spectre A. What happened? Spirit A seemed to be dumbfounded. She couldn't understand why her sisters suddenly fell. Nothing, it's just that the effects of the medicine have taken effect. Guhan finally answered the spirit's question. The sleeping pills from Wallace Pharmacy are still so effective. They said it would take effect in 3 minutes. Chapter 81. It had been exactly 30 days since the Dark Dragon King Zunaida arrived in this world. As one of the 7 most powerful dragon kings of the Wind Continent, Zunaida had no interest in heading to other worlds. He was already a supreme existence in his own world, so why would he need to go and fight in another? However, whether he came to this world or not was not up to him. When he woke up from his slumber, he found himself in this world out of the blue, accompanied by a small group of his own men. Unfortunately, the subordinates that came with him were too weak. They were all minions. His own son, the Dragon-Lick Mage, the Skeleton Demon King, the Vampire Prince, and other powerful subordinates did not come with him. Helpless, Zunaida could only reluctantly pack up his subordinates and recruit some wandering Yuan Ku. Then, he decided to once again raise the banner of the Zunaida family in this unfamiliar world. If he wanted to raise the banner of the Zunaida family and develop the great Zunaida family in another world, he had to first build a safe, luxurious, and aesthetically pleasing dark dragon lair. After more than 10 days of searching, Zunaida was pleasantly surprised to discover a precipitous mountain peak that was suitable for a dragon's residence appearing within its field of vision. Although this mountain seemed to have a master, it was just a bunch of lowly humans. Back on the Wind Continent, he had eaten a bunch of things like sword saints and archmages, but they were all trash. Hence, Zunaida very benevolently announced to these humans that they would all become the dinner of the great Dark Dragon King Zunaida. Oh, that's right, except for the beautiful young ladies. They would become Zunaida's mating partners. On the Wind Continent, although the dragons were the most powerful race, they couldn't conceive between themselves. Only humans and dragons could give birth to offspring, and among these offspring, there was a 1 in 10 chance that they would give birth to a purebred dragon. This was how Zunida's only son came to be. His mother was a strong barbarian, and she actually persisted in mating with Zunida for 3 nights. Generally speaking, the fragile human race was unable to withstand the mating of the dragon race. Once the dragon race forced themselves on them, 99% of the human race girls would die on the spot. Only some talented girls could survive. Therefore, even though the dragon race mated day and night for the sake of their offspring, it was still difficult for a child to be born even after hundreds of years. Zunida was very sad at the thought. His scales were standing on end as he remembered the 700 years he had toiled day and night for his children. It was truly a tragic story. However, the battle to occupy their nest was not smooth. Among the group of small humans, there was an extremely powerful girl. The scales that he was so proud of, which could only be damaged by forbidden spells, were actually unable to defend against the sword in the girl's hand. The places that were injured by her sword were unable to heal, and they would continuously corrode and bleed. Moreover, the girl could cast forbidden lightning-type spells to trap him in a cage of lightning, rendering him unable to move and causing his beautiful black skin to become even darker. Zunida was furious. He used all his strength that he had never used in his life to fight the girl. They fought from the summit to the Great Lake hundreds of kilometers away, and then from the Great Lake to the snowy mountains. Both sides fought at full strength for a day and a night, but in the end, he was still 1 step ahead and tore the girl's body to pieces. Strangely, however, the sword in the girl's hand had flown off to some unknown place after her death. He wanted to intercept the sword and make it part of his collection, but the direct result of that action was a huge hole in his dragon claw. Zunida was also heavily injured in the battle with the girl, especially the places that were injured by the sword. Those wounds seemed to be imbued with powerful corrosive magic, and even the powerful regenerative abilities of the dragon race couldn't heal them. Zunida was a cautious person, and what if there were others as powerful as the girl in that human settlement? That was why Zunida decided to heal his wounds first before dealing with those despicable humans. The place where Zunida was recuperating was in a valley beneath Mount Wudang. There was a large field of pale blue flowers there, very similar to the pair of pale blue eyes that Zunida remembered in his heart. That youth with no regrets. Zunida indulged in his memories. Zunida estimated that his body would recover by tonight, and just happened to receive a report from his subordinate, the goblin wizard Slime, that someone had broken through his blockade and entered the summit. Zunida was very displeased, and so decided that once his wounds healed, he would go to the summit and settle the score with those humans. But before that, he decided to send his men to attack the human stronghold in order to find out if the humans still had any powerful forces. If those humans did not have any powerful forces, then he could rely on his subordinates to wipe them all out, saving him the trouble of doing it himself. Zunida stuck out his tongue and continuously licked his wounds. He could feel that the strange magic that was restraining his wounds was about to completely disappear, and he would be fully recovered in 20 minutes. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, we found this human in the pond at the side. Suddenly, a group of goblin subordinates carried a human to Zunida's side. The leader was none other than Yuan Ku. It was the goblin wizard Slime. Human. Zunida opened his eyes and discovered that the human that was carried by the goblins was an old man. His body was riddled with wounds, and he was dead. Zunida did not like to eat skeletons of old humans, much less those that were about to die. It liked to eat humans that were alive and full of vitality. Zunida raised its claws. You guys eat this human. If there's nothing else, don't disturb me. Thank you, Your Majesty. Your Majesty's grace makes me feel like flying. Slime flattered the dragon and said, But Your Majesty, did you notice that this old man is wearing the same clothes as those humans on the top of the mountain? This old man fell from the top of the mountain, so what? Zunida continued to lick his wounds. Your Majesty, based on this person's age, he must know the situation on the summit like the back of his hand. If we could obtain information from this human, why would His Majesty wait here? The goblin wizard Slime explained. Zunida paused for a moment, then waved its claws. Leave this human here, Then scram, yes, yes. A few goblins put down the human and ran. Zunida's dragon head extended downwards and curled its tongue, swallowing the human corpse into its stomach. The Dark Dragon King's stomach juice quickly melted the old man's body, but a magical force protected the old man's brain. Then, it quickly extracted the memories in his brain. A few minutes later, the Dragon King Zunida, who had digested all of the old man's memories, stood up abruptly, spreading his giant wings and howling towards the sky. There were no more sword maidens or sword bearers on the summit. Why was Zunida still crouching at the foot of the mountain? Benefactor military governor, these 5 have been tied up. How should we destroy the ghosts that are attached to them? The old Taoist priest asked Guhan anxiously. Behind him were the 5 women's relatives who were even more anxious. They were afraid that the military governor's method would be to throw them off the cliff like what he did to the old Taoist priest. Killing them is the fastest way. Guhan's words made everyone's hearts clench. However, Guhan changed the topic, but it's not like we have to kill them. Phew. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Benefactor military governor, what should we do? The old Taoist priest asked. This is the Wu-Tang sect, one of the martial arts sects. But if I remember correctly, your job is to be a Taoist priest, right? Guhan pursed his lips. Isn't exorcising ghosts and demons your job? The group of Taoists looked at each other. For the past 200 years, the Taoists of the Wu-Tang sect had been in charge of fighting. Who would have the time to study exorcising ghosts and demons? If they hadn't seen ghosts with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that ghosts existed in this world. What? Not a single person who can exorcise ghosts and demons? Guhan asked again. At that moment, a hand was raised weakly. It was a very young Taoist priest. I can draw some talismans. I can only draw them according to the Taoist books. I'm not sure if they'll work. Sure. Bring me the yellow paper. The talisman of the young Taoist priest was obviously useful. Otherwise, the players in the past wouldn't have been able to destroy the ghosts and phantoms hidden in the human body. This young Taoist priest was actually specially arranged by the system so that the players wouldn't be helpless against ghosts. The young Taoist priest took out a bunch of yellow paper. This was an old thing from 200 years ago. However, there was a saying that the older the yellow paper, the better the effect. The yellow paper was here, but the cinnabar was nowhere to be seen. This was not surprising. Not only could cinnabar be used to draw talismans, but it was also a kind of paint and a kind of medicinal ingredient. After 200 years, the pure cinnabar of the Wu-Tang mountain had long been used up. However, it didn't matter if there was no cinnabar. Yuan Kong was enough. Guhan first asked Yuan Kong to return the frigid aqua sword to its sword form. This way, the protective shield on the surface of his body disappeared. Then, Guhan took out the Qingpin sword and cut Yuan Kong's finger. Blood flowed out. After collecting it with a small plate, he gave it to the young Taoist priest. It's useless against Yuan Ku. Nothing is better than the blood of a sword-bearer, Guhan explained. Not long after, the young Taoist priest used Yuan Kong's blood to draw dozens of exorcism talismans according to the diagram in the Taoist book. He stuck them on the foreheads of the 5 possessed women. The moment the talismans were stuck on the 5 women, their faces turned hideous and terrifying. They began to struggle madly, trying to tear off the talismans on their heads. Unfortunately, their hands and feet were tightly bound, and they couldn't move at all. Their frenzied state made their relatives shed tears of sadness. Military governor, how long will this last? The old Taoist priest couldn't help but ask. About 20 minutes. Guhan thought for a moment. The reinforcements from Yangjing City would arrive around this time. There would be one last wave of Minotaurs attacking later. Once the Minotaurs were eliminated, the SSS rank mission evaluation would basically be achieved. This Wu-Tang Peak dungeon could be considered to have come to a successful end. Just as Guhan was thinking about this, a sharp howl like thunder and lightning echoed through the entire Wu-Tang mountain. It was the cry of a dragon. Chapter 82. Why is the Dark Dragon King roaring at this time? Guhan's expression changed. According to the forum's records, once the Dark Dragon King's Unider roared, it meant that he had recovered from his injuries and was about to attack the peak of Wudong Mountain. However, this kind of roar only happened when there was only 1 minute left before the mission ended and Yangjing City's reinforcements arrived. At that time, there would naturally be Yangjing City's immortal sword-level swordsman to deal with the Dark Dragon King's Unider. The players just had to wait patiently for the mission to end. Did I estimate the time wrongly? Is the mission almost over? Guhan immediately glanced at the system time. That's right, there were still about 20 minutes left before the mission ended. Seeing that there was no change in the time, Guhan immediately felt a strong sense of foreboding. This dungeon was probably going to usher in another change. Qingyu, what's the situation outside? Guhan immediately used the sword mark to connect to Qingyu's ditch. Haha. Qingyu laughed loudly. Despicable person, you have no idea. There were 3 stupid minotaurs that ran over just now. In the end, this king glared at them and they ran away in fear. It must be this king's domineering aura that frightened them. Scared your sister? Guhan anxiously retorted. Observe the situation outside. If there are any changes, inform me immediately. He ignored Qingyu's angry shouts and forcefully hung up. I hope it's not the worst-case scenario. Guhan faintly guessed a certain possibility. If that was really the case, then he really had no way of dealing with it. The huge difference of a few realms was not something that could be made up for with swordsmanship. However, it was better to speed up and get rid of these 5 spirits. He could not wait for 20 minutes. Otherwise, if something happened and they broke free, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Yuan Kong, release the frigid aqua sword. Guhan once again ordered Yuan Kong to release the frigid aqua sword. When Shui Han's body appeared in front of Guhan, Guhan quickly walked to Ghost Yu Ruo's side. He pinched her talisman and shook her head. There's no time to explain. Hurry up and kiss her lips. What? Shui Han, who had just been liberated, was dumbfounded. What was going on? Why did he have to kiss a woman? I'm not a lesbian. Yuan Kong, use the forceful command to control Shui Han and make her kiss this woman's lip. Guhan knew that Shui Han was a straight woman through and through. It would take at least 10 minutes to convince her to kiss a woman. Therefore, Guhan chose to let Yuan Kong give the order. This. Yuan Kong hesitated. He could tell that Shui Han was unwilling to do it. In fact, Yuan Kong did not want his sword lady to do it either. Yuan Kong, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. I'll count to 3. If you don't let Shui Han kiss you, I'll kill this woman with a single sword strike, so as to avoid trouble later. Guhan decided to use a simple and crude method. Generally speaking, this method would only be used by evil people. Good people would not use this method. 1, 2. Shui Han, I'm ordering you. Do as benefactor military governor says. Yuan Kong finally gave in to Guhan's threat. Shui Han had no choice but to lean forward and kiss Yu Ruo's lips. At that moment, Shui Han cried, don't just kiss her. Breathe into her mouth. It's like giving her artificial respiration, Guhan continued. Damn it. If you had told me to do artificial respiration earlier, I wouldn't have resisted so much, and I wouldn't have cried. Shui Han cried even harder when she heard Guhan's words. Her moral integrity was gone. Everyone present did not know why Guhan would suddenly do this like a lunatic. However, they soon understood. The moment Shui Han breathed into Yu Ruo's mouth, Yu Ruo, who had been acting like she was having an epileptic seizure, instantly calmed down. Black smoke rose from the top of her head. Next. After the black smoke above Yu Ruo's head disappeared, Guhan let go of Yu Ruo, letting her fall unconscious on the ground. Then, he grabbed the head of the other possessed girl and shook it non-stop. You can untie Yu Ruo now. The spectre in her body has already turned into black smoke and died. Just wait for a few dozen minutes. They'll be fine once they wake up. Guhan would not tell them that the reason the black smoke was produced was because of the electromagnetic waves of the spectre. They were forced to explode by Shui Han's aura, burning the girls' cerebral cortexes. Although it was not enough to kill the girls, they were probably in a vegetative state. After all, It was just a bunch of data. Benefactor, military governor. Did you ask Shui Han to do this to speed up the process of eliminating the spectre? Yuan Kong asked expectantly. He felt that he had done something wrong to Shui Han. However, if it was for something good, he would feel much better. Humans were like this. Even though they were forcing others to do something they did not want to do, they liked to comfort themselves with something else. For example, a mother would not let you watch TV so that you could study. You might say that it was for a better future, but to put it bluntly, you just wanted to look better when you were chatting with the auntie next door. It was almost the same logic. That's right. The frigid aqua sword has been worshipped for 800 years, giving her the ability to expel evil and vengeful spirit. The incense aura on her body is the greatest damage to the spectre. One breath of hers is equivalent to 100 talismans drawn by you guys, Guhan explained. This was also the reason why he brought the frigid aqua sword into Skyward Palace. It was to prevent this kind of emergency from happening. Despicable scum. Bad news. Dragon. A dragon is coming. When all the spectres had been dealt with and the 5 girls had become vegetative, King Yu's panicked voice reached Guhan's mind through the sword mark. Guhan's heart skipped a beat. The worst thing had happened. All of you wait here. Don't go out. Guhan left these words and dashed out of Skyward Palace. At this moment, King Yu, Tian Xing, and Yu Ling were all standing at the edge of the cliff. They lowered their heads and looked down at the bottom of the cliff. Guhan also rushed over. He lowered his head and looked down. Holy T, a pitch-black dragon was flapping its huge wings rhythmically, continuously ascending to the top of the mountain. Seeing the dragon's slow ascension and leisurely posture, it was obvious that it did not care about the humans at the top of the mountain. It treated this as a game. As long as it reached the top, it would be a huge massacre. However, this also gave Guhan some time to escape from the dungeon before the Dark Dragon King reached the top of the mountain. I can't beat it. Guhan immediately made such a judgment in his heart. The Dark Dragon King of the universe level, Yuan Ku, who was comparable to a celestial sword-level sword wielder, was definitely not someone he could deal with. This was no longer an opponent that could rely on swordsmanship to challenge someone of a higher level. With just over 500 sword element points and more than 5,000 sword energy points, he could not use the last few powerful moves of the mysterious Heaven 9 swords. If he really made a move, he probably wouldn't even be able to make a scratch. If Guhan had the sword element points of a spirit sword level sword wielder, Guhan still had the confidence to fight and delay for some time. But now, of course, he had to run as far as he could. Anyway, this was a dungeon. So what if he forcefully left? There was no reward for this dungeon, so what else could he do? Let's leave the dungeon. Guhan made a prompt decision. He pulled King Yu's hand and pulled her to his side. Leave. King Yu was unwilling. What about the survivors here? They are all counting on us to protect them. It's just a bunch of data. After Guhan finished speaking, he walked into Heaven Palace without looking back. The exit to forcefully leave the dungeon was inside Heaven Palace. What did you say? King Yu suddenly shook off Guhan's hand and looked at Guhan angrily. She wanted to leave her teeth and said hatefully, "This king is not leaving. Even if this king breaks, this king is going to stay here." You. Guhan saw King Yu's firm expression and was touched. His attitude softened. I need a reason. The Dark Dragon King made his move in advance. 20 minutes is enough for him to wipe out the humans at the top of the mountain 20 times. Whether we stay or not, the outcome is the same. Do you understand? Because this king is just a bunch of data. King Yu raised her head and looked into Guhan's eyes. If one day, this king is going to die, you will also give up on this king because this king is just a bunch of data, right? King Yu is right. I will definitely give up on her because that is the kind of person I am. King Yu is just a bunch of data in the game. Guhan replied to herself in her heart. I won't. Guhan shook her head firmly in front of King Yu. You are my sword lady, I will never give up on you. Is that so? King Yu's expression softened. That was why women had to be coaxed. Even if she wanted to go to Dongguan right now, She still had to say that she only loved her and that she was only going on a business trip. Otherwise, this world would be too cruel. In a sense, it was lies that made this world warmer. Then promise me to stay and fight to the end. King Yu smiled. Actually, even if we are killed by the Dark Dragon King, we will just have to leave the dungeon later. The outcome will be the same, we don't need to leave. Let us fight to the end, okay? Ji Yuhan felt a headache when he heard that. Of course, there was a difference between quitting the dungeon voluntarily and quitting the dungeon after being killed. In Sword Maiden Online, there was no such thing as losing EXP, but once the sword wielder died or the Sword Maiden was broken, they would all receive the punishment of not being able to log in for 3 days. This was to prevent the players from not cherishing their lives and the Sword Lady's behavior. Logically speaking, Guhan should have agreed to King Yu's request. That way, even if he died, he would just not be able to log in for 3 days. However, it would increase his relationship with King Yu. This was a good deal. However, Guhan hesitated. Logic told him that he should agree to King Yu, but his instincts made him retreat. In Guhan's heart, there was a secret that no one knew. Guhan was afraid of death, extremely afraid of death. He was extremely afraid. Even in the game, he was extremely afraid. Okay, we will fight to the end. Guhan nodded towards King Yu. King Yu instantly smiled like a flower. It wasn't that Guhan was convinced by King Yu, but the system notification. System notification. Player Guhan, due to your abnormal behavior, the Dark Dragon King's Unider has moved out in advance. The system is in a closed state and the exit has been closed. Please hold on until reinforcements arrive. Successful completion of the dungeon will increase the dungeon reward by 5 times. If you die in the dungeon, you will not be able to enter any dungeon for 3 days. I wish you a happy game. Chapter 83. Yu Wang Gojian Jian Jian was a dungeon that had existed since the start of the game, and had lasted for more than 200 years. In these 200 years, no one had ever heard of the Dark Dragon King, Zunider, appearing 20 minutes early and sealing the entire exit route of the dungeon. Congratulations to Guhan, after the Zhenyuan Garrison Crusade mission, you have unlocked a brand new, never-before-seen side quest. This side quest was even a side quest of the dungeon. As a dungeon with tens of thousands of players, the chance of this happening was even higher than the chance of winning 5 million. Guhan should never have thrown the old Taoist down the cliff. In the past, countless players had caused countless survivors to fall off the cliff due to various reasons when they tried to clear this dungeon. And 999% of these survivors fell off the cliff due to Yuan Ku's attacks. Only perverted players who were out of their minds and wanted to torture NPCs would push survivors off the cliff. However, these perverted players were interested in the young and beautiful female survivors, as well as the cute young men, or the middle-aged Taoist priests who got in their way. But the players who were interested in pushing the old Taoist priest, who stayed in the Sutra Depository all year round, down the cliff was 0.1% of the 0.001%. Later, scholars who specialized in researching Guhan's life, after tens of thousands of people jointly requested BAT to publish this data, found out that in the 200 years before Guhan, only 4 people had voluntarily thrown the old Taoist priest off the cliff. Among these 4 people, only 2 had thrown the old Taoist priest off the cliff at the back door of Chaotian Palace. Among these 2 people, only Guhan had let the goblin mage slime live. All these coincidences contributed to the change in the Dark Dragon King. This is the hidden Easter egg of the system. I didn't think that someone would really trigger it. This was the answer given by BAT in the face of a large number of scholars' questions. She insisted that this was a preset Easter egg, and refused to acknowledge the popular BAT conspiracy theory. As time went by, the truth had long since become vague and unquestionable. Only the later generations argued until their faces were red with anger, creating a group of stubborn scholars that supported tens of thousands of people out of thin air. Yu Tu. Guhan, who had decided to fight to the death, pulled Tian Xing and Yu Ling out of the cliff. Things have changed. I can no longer protect you. Now that things have come to this, I can only fight. Go and report to Chaotian Palace. Tell everyone to escape the main road down the mountain. I'm afraid this pillar of heaven peak will not exist for long. Yu Ling and Tian Xing looked at each other. They bowed deeply to Guhan, then ran towards Chaotian Palace. Tens of seconds later, Chaotian Palace was filled with wails. Countless survivors grabbed their belongings and rushed out of Chaotian Palace. They began to escape towards the only road down the mountain. They cursed madly as they ran. They cursed Guhan for lying to them. The Dark Dragon King would not attack. They cursed Guhan for lying to them. They cursed that reinforcements would come to save them. If they had escaped through the main road at noon, they might have already escaped Mount Wudang and reached a safe place. They hated Guhan for acting like he was their savior, but he could not save them at all. But at this time, Guhan did not care what these survivors thought of him. Because at this time, the Dark Dragon King, Zunaida, was already flapping its huge wings and standing proudly in front of Guhan. Zunaida was a Western dragon with a very standard build. Its 2 dragon claws could cover 3 Optimus Prime trucks, and its huge wings had a wingspan larger than a football field. If it crouched down, it could cover an area the size of the White House. It looked at Guhan, who was blocking its way, as if it was looking at an ant. Its pair of dragon eyes did not show the contempt, disdain, or pity that Guhan had expected. Instead, there was a feeling similar to curiosity. I know you. You were the one who pushed that human off the cliff, but in that human's memory, he did not seem to hate you. This really makes this dragon curious. Zunaida suddenly spoke. Although every word had a thick nasal sound and the emptiness of a wind tunnel, it spoke standard Mandarin. This was not strange. It had absorbed the human's memory, so naturally it had mastered this simple language. It should be known that the dragon language of the dragon race had more than 100,000 syllables. It was more than 100 times more complicated than human language. Your Majesty, the Dark Dragon King, Zunaida, I, the military governor of Yangjing City, pay my respects to you. Seeing that the Dark Dragon King Zunaida did not attack him directly, but instead spoke to him, Guhan felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps he could use words to stall for these 20 minutes. Hence, Guhan directly read out Zunaida's name. In history, after Zunaida was killed, humans only learned of his name and story through the wealth and treasures he carried with him. Before this, no one knew that this Western dragon was the Dragon King of the Dark Dragons, nor did they know that his name was Zunaida. Oh, there's actually someone in this world who knows this king's name. As expected, Zunaida's interest was piqued. It squinted its dragon eyes that were about the size of a human. Human, seeing that you know this king's name, this king will swallow you in one gulp. After saying this, Zunaida flapped its wings and swept towards Guhan's position. It opened its bloody mouth and bit off the entire rock that Guhan was standing on. Pa! Zunaida spat out the rock in its mouth. The human did not enter its mouth, but instead ran away quickly, escaping from its attack range. Human, your skills are not bad. I didn't think that there would be a human in this world who is as nimble as a sword master. Zunaida was a little surprised. It had thought that the humans in this world were all mortals, relying on them to become Sword Maiden's weapons in battle. However, Zunaida did not mind its mistake, because it was just having some fun, and had not used its true strength or speed. Your Majesty Zunaida, could it be that you don't want to know why a little native like me knows your noble name? Guhan breathed roughly as the King of Yu held his hand. Zunaida had not used much strength just now, but Guhan had used 70% of his strength. Zunaida's speed and attack range were too great, and dodging was too difficult. Of course this king is interested. Zunaida turned around, however, compared to my mouth, this king prefers to directly interrogate your souls. Zunaida swooped down and attacked again. This time, its speed was 30% faster than before. Ji Han had to use almost all of his strength to barely escape from Zunaida's mouth. So powerful, I can feel that he's only toying with me right now. He hasn't used his true strength at all. Guhan knelt on the ground in exhaustion. It was only because the King of Yu supported his waist that he did not fall to the ground. Guhan gasped for breath, and this was with half of the King of Yu's constitution on him. Otherwise, with his original constitution, perhaps he would have been bitten into Zunaida's mouth on the first attack. Oh, human, You actually dodged this king's second attack. You've already successfully piqued this king's curiosity. This king wants to see if you can dodge this king's third attack. Zunaida's voice sounded very happy. After experiencing a battle of life and death, being able to tease a weak opponent was also a rare pleasure. Zunaida decided that even if Guhan could not dodge the third time, it would not kill him. At most, it would chew off a part of his body. Seeing this human wail in pain was too wonderful. I still have to struggle for 17 more minutes. Guhan glanced at the system time. He had already succeeded in letting himself live for 3 more minutes. King of Yu, return to the sword. Since the King of Yu's constitution could only dodge to this extent, then he would obtain 100% bonus. Hearing Guhan's order, the King of Yu did not hesitate. Even though his face was red, he still quickly raised his beautiful buttocks in front of Guhan. Logically speaking, this buttocks was an irresistible temptation for any virgin. Even Guhan was excited for a second. Then, he gritted his teeth, reached into the King of Yu's crotch, and pulled out the sword hilt. A huge force surged into Ji Yuhan's body from the sword hilt, and the feeling of powerlessness he felt from dodging with all his might was instantly diluted. At this time, Ji Yuhan was confident that even if the dragon's speed was twice as fast, he would still be able to dodge it. Sure enough, just as Guhan felt, Zunaida's third attack was easily dodged by Guhan. If he was not afraid of completely angering the dragon and stopping this stalling game, Guhan was even confident that he could stab Zunaida's lips. Of course, it was useless. It was worse than biting off a small piece of skin. With this thought in mind, Guhan played this dodging game with Zunaida 3 more times, successfully stalling for another 2 minutes. However, after the third time, Zunaida suddenly roared, "Human, Zunaida had a lot of fun today. Now, Zunaida has decided to really eat you." With that, Zunaida pounced towards Ji Yuhan like a bolt of lightning that was more than 3 times faster than it was before. Guhan did not expect that Zunaida would suddenly attack. Even though it had obtained the full constitution of the King of Yu, it was still only a famed sword. At this moment, Guhan used all his strength to escape, but was still unable to escape Zunaida's huge mouth. He was bitten into the dragon's mouth. This human speed is actually comparable to a human sword saint. Just now, 20% of my speed almost didn't manage to bite him. What a disgrace. Zunaida thought inwardly. However, this interesting human was only a toy in the end. It was already tired of playing, and food was Guhan's final destination. Chapter 84. If there was something in the dragon's mouth that Guhan couldn't stand, it would definitely be the disgusting stench. This was the smell of feet that hadn't been washed in 30 years. Luckily, Guhan sealed his nose in time, otherwise he would have fainted. Fainting might be better. Guhan shook his head in the dragon's mouth. If I fainted, perhaps I wouldn't have to experience the feeling of death. Guhan thought to himself. After entering Zunaida's mouth, unless Guhan immediately went berserk and had the strength of a celestial sword, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape from the dragon's mouth. Suddenly, a ray of light shone from the depths of the dragon's mouth. Of course, it wasn't some melodramatic scene of a treasure being born from the dragon's mouth. This light was the light of dragon flames. Dragon flames were the most basic method of attack for dragons. A random dragon flame that was spat out had a temperature of over 10,000 degrees, and could easily melt most of human metals. And not only did the black dragon's dragon flame have an extremely high temperature, it also had a powerful corrosive ability, able to corrode any flesh and blood. This ball of dragon flame was a gift from Zunaida to Guhan. In the narrow space of the dragon's mouth, the destructive power of a huge ball of flame that was tens of thousands of degrees exploding was obvious. Any human here would instantly be melted into a pile of ash when facing this ball of dragon flame. When he saw this ball of dragon flame, Guhan had already given up. People have to learn to die, Guhan told himself. But the moment Guhan completely gave up, the moment he let go of King Yu's Go-Gen sword, King Yu instantly turned into human form and used his body to cover Guhan's body. System: Sword Maiden King Yu has taken 17,560 damage. System: Sword Maiden King Yu's personal shield has disappeared. Sword wielder military governor's personal shield has disappeared. Shield resetting will take 30 seconds. System: Sword Maiden King Yu's body has taken 17,056 damage, causing 99% durability loss, remaining durability 1%. System: Warning, warning, your Sword Maiden King Yu only has 1% durability left. Please retract immediately, please retract immediately. System: Warning, warning, Sword Maiden King Yu is suffering continuous damage from the flames. Durability remaining 1%. Sword Maiden King Yu cannot withstand a second attack. Please withdraw your sword within 3 seconds. Please withdraw your sword within 3 seconds. System: Warning, warning, Sword Maiden King Yu is suffering continuous damage from the flames. Durability remaining 1%. Sword Maiden King Yu cannot withstand a second attack. Please withdraw your sword within 2 seconds. Please withdraw your sword within 2 seconds. System: Warning, warning, Sword Maiden King Yu is suffering continuous damage from the flames. Durability remaining 1%. Sword Maiden Yu Wang cannot withstand a second attack. Please withdraw your sword within 1 second. Please withdraw your sword within 1 second. Mr. Military Governor, all the survivors have been successfully evacuated from Skyward Palace. While Zunaida was using its mouth as a microwave to heat up Guhan, Sword Maiden Tian Xing ran out from Skyward Palace. When Tian Xing and Yu Ling reported the news to the Skyward Palace, the old Taoist who was in the refinement realm made a prompt decision to order all the survivors to immediately flee down the mountain. He also ordered the 28 Taoist priests, as well as the Yu Ling sword, the frigid water sword, and the Tianxing sword to escort the survivors down the mountain. As for how many of them would be able to successfully escape from Zunaida's draconic might, only the heavens knew. Originally, Tianxing's sword was supposed to escort the troops down the mountain, but Tianxing was unwilling to leave. Tianxing's sword wielder, the old granny, was basically senile and couldn't give any orders to Tianxing. As such, Tianxing stayed until all the survivors had left. Only then did she return to the battlefield at the top of the mountain to inform Guhan. Unfortunately, she was a step too late. Guhan had already been swallowed by Zunaida and eaten a mouthful of dragon flames. Stupid humans, do they think they can escape? I can catch them all in the blink of an eye. Tianxing's words also reached Zunaida's ears. He spat out a flame from his nostrils and said disdainfully, "Woman, you have some guts. You actually came back to inform me. Very well, this prince has decided that tonight, you shall serve this prince in bed. This prince wants to." Suddenly, Zunaida stopped talking. Ruyue. When Shunida saw Tianxing's face clearly, it was so shocked that it forgot to flap its wings and fell to the top of the mountain. Incidentally, when Shunida was so shocked that it could not close its mouth, a black object fell out of its mouth. Ruyue phobia. Is that you? Shunaida's huge dragon body began to shrink rapidly. In the end, he actually turned into a human. He was a golden-haired man in black armor. After he turned into a human, he immediately appeared beside Tianxing and pressed down on his shoulder. Ruyue, it's me. It's me, Dark Shunida. From Zunaida's sincere and joyful eyes, it could be seen that Zunaida really cherished this woman named Ruyue phobia. When he first saw Tianxing, he seemed to melt into a ball of tenderness and honey, forgetting everything around him. My name is Tianxing. I am a sword mistress. Tianxing shook his head and denied it. No, you are Ruyue phobia. You are the great three-headed golden dragon princess. You are the only woman that I, Dark Zunaida, have ever loved. You are definitely not a sword mistress of this world. Your height, appearance, expression, smell, even your perfect B-cup size is exactly the same. You are my Ruyue. Zunaida seemed to have gone crazy. The entire plot had taken a shocking turn. From a hot-blooded online game about a hot-blooded young man fighting, it had suddenly turned into a melodramatic 8 p.m. TV series. The three-headed Golden Dragon Clan and the Obsidian Black Dragon Clan were one of the 7 great dragon clans in Wind's previous world. The history of the Wind's continent was intertwined with that of the three-headed Golden Dragon Clan and the Obsidian Black Dragon Clan. As for the tragic love story between Ruzu Faber and Dark Sunaida, That wasn't something we needed to discuss right now. At the very least, it wasn't something we needed to discuss in the Wudang Pinnacle dungeon. Just as Tianxing had mysteriously turned into the moon and completely attracted the attention of the Dark Dragon King Zunida, a pair of hands suddenly grabbed the charred corpse that Zunida had just spat out and slowly dragged it towards the Skyward Palace. "Mom, what are we going to eat today?" A lively and cute boy with eyes as big as pearls and a face as handsome as spring water asked excitedly as he hugged his mom's waist. "We're going to eat this." Mom shook the basket in her hands. There were a few large potatoes and chili peppers inside, which were especially eye-catching. "Yay! It's hot and sour shredded potatoes. Hooray! We can eat hot and sour shredded potatoes again." The boy was so excited that he almost jumped up. It had been 2 weeks since he had eaten the hot and sour shredded potatoes made by his mom. "Why are you buying potatoes again? Darling, have you not considered how much money your man has left in his wallet?" A 30-year-old man who looked 70% like the boy said to his mom with a bitter face, "Honey, I only have $3 left in my pocket money. It's not even as much as a potato. Let's talk about it and give me next month's pocket money in advance." "Go, go, go. Go away, it's none of your business." Mom pushed away the hand that Dad had stretched out and put the basket on the table. Then, she ran towards her bedroom, asking as she ran, "Where's Yun Yun? Is she still sleeping? Did she wet the bed?" "Hihi, honey, don't worry. With me watching her, Yun Yun is sleeping well," Dad said with a smirk. Then, Mom walked out of the room with a 4-year-old Lolita who looked 80% like the boy. Mom's other hand was holding a wet diaper. This cute daughter, as expected, wet the bed again. The family spent a happy time together. Suddenly, the lights in the room began to flicker, and all sounds were lost in the picture. Mom and Dad stood up anxiously and said something to each other, but they couldn't hear anything. The whole scene seemed to have become a funny mime. Then, Dad opened the entrance of the slide on the floor. The family quickly slid down the slide, and soon, they slid to the first floor. However, the slide was still moving. The family continued to slide down from the first floor. They didn't know how long they slid, or how far they slid, until they fell on a piece of floating air cushion. This was a huge underground shelter. On the wall of the shelter, the numbers 3005 and 5000 were displayed. The underground shelter was still very noisy. Countless people poured down from the various slides and then gathered together, shouting, quarreling, and comforting each other. The little boy's family curled up near the wall. The 4 of them hugged each other and comforted each other. "Mom, I'm hungry. I want to eat pork." Suddenly, the sound returned and could be heard. The little sister's eyes were filled with tears. She cried and looked at her mother. "Yun Yun, I have a bag of sweet potato jerky here. Hammer gave it to me. You're hungry, you can eat it first." The little boy handed the snacks he treasured to the little sister. The little sister took a few bites of the hard and dry sweet potato jerky and cried again. "Mom, I'm thirsty. I want to drink water." "I'll go get water for you. There should be drinking water in the shelter." Dad decided to take up the responsibility of a father. He comforted Mom and then disappeared into the huddled crowd. Seeing that Dad was missing, the little sister cried even more sadly. Mom could only keep patting the little sister's back. The big brother tried his best to make all kinds of funny faces, trying to make his little sister happy. Suddenly, the big brother staggered and fell to the ground. It was not that the big brother lost his balance, but the whole ground began to shake. Earthquake. Mom's expression was very frightened. She hugged the little sister and pulled the big brother, not knowing what to do. She could only keep asking, "Dad, Dad, where are you, where are you? Xiao Hui, I'm coming, I'm coming." Dad finally appeared in the sight of the big brother and mother. He held a big bottle of water in his hand and was trying his best to weave through the crowd, trying to return to his wife and child. Pa. A huge foot fell from the sky and stepped on the place where Dad was. When the foot was lifted again, there was only a pile of bright red meat on the ground. At this moment, the world became a mime again, losing all sound. The owner of the huge foot started to attack the humans in the shelter crazily. Everyone ran around in fear. When he turned around to look for his mother, He saw that his mother and little sister were squeezed to the ground by the crowd. "Mom!" The big brother seemed to shout and wanted to go back to pull his mother up. If the bullets rained down, countless flowers of blood suddenly bloomed on the body of his mother and little sister, like a fountain, so beautiful. "Don't die, Mom is begging you, Xiao Han, don't die." The mother said the last sentence and used the last of her strength to cover her little sister's body. "Benefactor military governor. Benefactor military governor. Great, you're finally awake." The world instantly changed from mime to drama. However, everything could not go back. "I'm afraid of death, I'm really afraid. But I promised Mom, I can't die." Chapter 85. Still haven't left the instance dungeon? Guhan opened his eyes and saw Refinement's old face. He then looked at his body. His clothes had been burned, but he didn't have to worry about exposing himself because Guhan's entire body was charred black, like honeycomb briquettes. Guhan took a look at his little brother. It was gone. It had turned into a pile of charcoal like salt and scattered on the ground. It was probably knocked down when Refinement dragged Guhan's body. Those who had burned firewood before all knew that dry firewood would shatter upon touch. Guhan couldn't even move his body. Apart from his head, Guhan couldn't control any other parts of his body. Ji Han used his mind to bring up his attribute panel. His HP had stopped at 5. After waiting for a while, he saw that his HP was still 5. This was a very unscientific thing. Those who played online games knew that health would either slowly rise or fall. Unless it was full, it wouldn't stay at a number and not move. "That's right, how's King Yu?" Guhan brought up the sword lady's page. The first page was the Qingpin sword. There were green numbers and it was in a dormant state. It seemed like she was doing well in the scabbard. On the other hand, King Yu's state was the opposite. It was crimson red, and all of its values were at their lowest. If not for the 1% durability remaining, Guhan would have thought that King Yu was dead for sure. Guhan vaguely remembered that at the last second before King Yu was destroyed, Guhan had subconsciously forced her back into the scabbard. Thanks to King Yu's 2 seconds, if not for that, Guhan might have already left the instance dungeon and revived. "Immeasurable heavenly sovereign, military governor, you have survived a great calamity. You will definitely have good fortune in the future." The old Taoist priest who had reached refinement symbolically comforted Guhan. Zunaida was still outside Skyward Palace, so the only difference between Guhan's death was whether he would die sooner or later. That might not be the case. As long as Guhan could hold on for another 10 minutes, he would be fine. At this time, there were only 10 minutes left before reinforcements from Yangjing City arrived. It had already been 5 minutes since he had fallen unconscious. For some reason, Zunaida had left Skyward Palace alone and not come to destroy it. Instead, it was dawdling outside Skyward Palace. Looking at the mission notification, the survivor death count was still 1. This was really strange. He had been unconscious for 5 minutes, and yet not a single survivor had died. What was this Zunaida doing? Master of the refinement realm, now that Wudong Mountain is about to be destroyed, why didn't you escape with the others, but stayed behind to save a cripple like me? Guhan asked curiously. He couldn't understand. There was no reason for this refinement realm Daoist to save him. He was already a lump of charcoal and had lost the ability to fight. He had even killed his grandmaster with his own hands. Logically speaking, if the refinement realm Daoist abandoned him and ran away, he would not have to bear any moral condemnation at all. Even if he killed Guhan with a sword, he would still be avenging his master. It was a matter of course. Although this humble Taoist is only the acting sect leader of Wudong sect, I will live and die with Wudong sect. It is enough that Yuan Kong and the others have escaped, but Wudong sect still needs someone to stay. Otherwise, Wudong sect, which has been famous for 800 years, would be a disgrace to Mount Amei if we don't even have a single martyr for our sect. The old Taoist priest laughed happily. It was obvious that he had made up his mind to die with Wudong sect. This old Taoist priest had probably already made up his mind to die when he led his disciples to attack the blockade. Master of the refinement realm, you may not be afraid of death, but I, Guhan, am very scary. In my sleep just now, I remembered that Guhan promised some people that I would never die. A few drops of tears formed at the corner of Guhan's eyes. It had been a long time since he had dreamed of that scene. He didn't expect to dream of that moment again in the game. Guhan, aren't you called military governor? When you are outside, it is always necessary to be on guard. Today, master of the refinement realm saved my life. How can I not tell you my real name? In truth, Guhan had said his real name because his brain had a cramp, and he could not react for a moment. Haha, I see. Benefactor Guhan, since you do not want to die, this humble Taoist may be able to help you. After saying that, the refinement realm master took out an exquisite jade bottle from his robe and shook out a pill. Back then, Wudang sect's founder, Lord Qingshu Yuan Miao, was in the Tushito Palace. He paid his respects to my three Pure Ones Grand Pure residents, Celestial Immortal Huakai, who ascended to the Grand Pure Realm and became the Sun God Treasure Lord, the Lord of Tao and Virtue, the Emperor of Primordial Chaos. The name is too long. You may not know, but he is the Grand Supreme Larojun that you speak of. The Grand Supreme Larojun said that my founder was fated to be his disciple. His orthodoxy in the mortal world was naturally the Grand Pure Realm, so he gave him a pot of 6 transformations immortal pills to prepare for the apocalypse. After the founder's soul returned, this bottle of 6 transformations immortal pills appeared in his hand. He warned us that unless it was an apocalypse, we must not consume this pill. Otherwise, we would die without a doubt. After saying that, the founder ascended to become an immortal and left. After that, 3 sect leaders tried to become immortals in vain and secretly consumed this bottle of immortal pills. In the end, they died on the spot with blood flowing out of their 7 orifices. Even their corpses turned into ashes. As time passed, there were no more sect leaders who dared to consume this 6 transformations immortal pill. 200 years ago, when the apocalypse began, although Wudang's terrain was dangerous, we could not stop the unstoppable Yuan Ku. A large number of Yuan Ku attacked the mountain. In order to protect the villagers and tourists, many of our disciples died. Patriarch Xijing, who was then the sect leader, risked his life and consumed this pill. Only then did he merge with Lady Zhenwu and become the Heavenly Master, saving Wudang from the disaster. Patriarch Xijing's situation back then is very similar to today. Benefactor Guhan, are you willing to consume this pill? Maybe you can save a collapsing building like Patriarch Xijing and save Wudang from the disaster. The old Taoist priest of minute subtlety's long speech stunned Guhan. What Taishang Larojun? 6 transformations immortal pill? Wasn't this too much of a xianxia? And this pill could directly create an immortal sword wielder. If this was true, why would humans be suppressed by Yuan Ku in the headquarter city and not be able to come out? Benefactor Guhan, you don't believe me? No, it's not that I don't believe you. I'm just curious. Since this pill can save Wudang, why didn't the sect leader of minute subtlety eat it himself? Guhan asked in return. Indeed, if it was really so magical, there was no reason for the master of minute subtlety not to eat it himself and give it to an outsider. Celestial Master Xijing said that no one on our Wudang mountain can eat this pill. Without this blessing, we can't enjoy such a pill. Otherwise, we will be like those 3 senior sect leaders who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, turning into ashes, never to be reincarnated. Entering refinement shook his head and put the pill on his cold lips. Benefactor Guhan, you can decide for yourself. If you want to fight to the death, open your mouth and swallow this pill. If you want to die with me, then blow and spit it out. With that, the master of minute subtlety left Guhan's side and walked towards the back of the hall. Item: 6 transformations immortal pill. Grade: legendary divine item. Effect: there is a 1% chance of immediately increasing 1 million sword essence points after consumption. There is a 99% chance of immediate death after consumption. Once consumed, immediately join Ren School and become an in-name disciple of Ren School. Usage restrictions: can only be used in a dungeon. After leaving the dungeon, the effect will disappear. Introduction: an immortal pill refined by Taishang Larojun. Only disciples of Ren School can consume it. It can actually create an Emperor Sword level sword wielder immediately. This elixir is actually real. Ji Yuhan looked at the attributes of the pill and realized that he was still too naive, thinking that he had a thorough understanding of the sword bearers after spending 12 years on the forum. In this world, there were still countless secrets that were buried deep in the ground by the upper echelons. There was nothing to hesitate about. Guhan opened his mouth, and the pill instantly fell into his mouth. The pill seemed to be made of water as it melted in his mouth. In less than a second, it melted in his mouth. The master of minute subtlety really tricked Guhan. With the speed at which it melted, he could forget about spitting it out after eating it. He ate it. The master of minute subtlety, who stood at the back of the hall and watched Guhan swallow the pill, shook his head and said, "Great power needs a strong heart to match it. A strong appearance can't withstand superficial power. My lord, aren't you being a little too excessive in interfering with his life?" Vaguely, the master of minute subtlety's old face seemed to become younger. Outside the Skyward Palace, Zunaida, who was hugging Tianxing tightly, finally calmed down from his own world. Once again, he looked at Tianxing carefully. He even used the demonic dragon's eye to see through Tianxing's soul. This woman had no soul, and this woman had no body. She couldn't be the three-headed golden dragon, Ruyue. Since when did I have to judge things with my own eyes like those stupid humans? Zunaida mocked himself and pushed Tianxing out of his arms. He used a lot of force, and Tianxing flew dozens of meters away. "Listen to me, woman. From today onwards, you are this king's mating tool. You're lucky to have the appearance of Ruyue. Otherwise, you would be like the other stupid humans, becoming a dessert for me to fill my stomach." After Zunaida finished speaking, he flew into the air. Under the gaze of the mystic dragon's eye, all the humans on the Wutang Mountain had nowhere to hide. At this time, the majority of the survivors were still slowly advancing on the mountain path near the mountain peak. Trying to run? Zunaida stretched out his left hand, and a black fireball formed instantly. This was the compressed version of Zunaida's dragon flame, and its power was no less than dragon flame. Zunaida only needed to throw it lightly, and that skewer of humans would be roasted into charcoal just like Guhan. "Go." Zunaida pushed his hand, and the fireball shot towards the crowd. Just as a large skewer of fresh human meat was about to be formed, a long sword suddenly flew out and blocked the path of the fireball. The entire fireball was instantly extinguished, as if it had never existed. "It's you." Zunaida turned around and saw that the sword that blocked his fireball had returned to the hands of a naked man. This man was none other than Guhan. Don't mind these details. Guhan realized that Zunaida was looking at his new snow-white body. He waved his hand. "I was going to wear a Taoist robe before coming out, but you didn't wait for me." Chapter 86. It's that sword. Zunaida's pupils shrank. He recognized that sword. It was the sword that had transformed into a girl and fought with him for a day and a night. In the end, he was heavily wounded and had no choice but to curl up at the foot of the mountain to recuperate for 3 days. Without any hesitation, Zunaida took out his black dragon spear. This was a weapon formed from the black dragon race's 15 milk teeth. It was unimaginably hard and immune to all magical damage. This dragon spear was normally nurtured in Zunaida's body. Unless it was facing a truly powerful enemy, the tenebrous demon dragon would never take out this dragon spear. To the tenebrous demon dragon's enemies, being able to force out the dragon spear was something they could brag about for a lifetime. "I'll have to trouble you, Daoist priest." Guhan took a set of robes from the hands of the minute subtlety expert and carelessly draped them over his body. He then tied a knot at his crotch to cover his important parts. "Your Majesty Zunaida, military governor, is untalented, but I'll have to ask for your guidance." As Guhan's voice fell, he turned into a bolt of lightning and appeared beside Zunaida in a flash of light. However, Zunaida had already maintained a highly vigilant state. The moment Guhan moved, the black dragon spear blocked the true force sword. Crash! After a thunderous explosion, Guhan and Zunaida separated once more. However, where their weapons had clashed just now, there was now a hole the size of a bus in the air. That strike just now had been a test for both Guhan and Zunaida. Otherwise, the entire mountain and skyward palace might have been blown away. How did this human's strength increase so much? Zunaida's expression changed. Guhan's strength could no longer be described as increasing, or even doubling. It was as if he had been reborn. It was as if a human's soul had been stuffed into a dragon's body. Is this the power of an immortal sword? Guhan gripped the True Force sword in his hand. The feeling of 1,000,000 sword essences being added to his body was extremely terrifying. It made Guhan feel as if he was the ruler of the world. Zunaida, do you know what the power of an immortal sword is? Guhan smirked. The True Force sword in his hand floated in the air and stopped in front of Guhan. This is a Daoist flying sword. Benefactor Guhan, have you learned our Daoist arts? This was the first time he had seen a flying sword technique. Even Heavenly Master Zhijing didn't have such a technique. I don't know if this is a Daoist technique. I only know that this move is called Swords Engrave. Guhan's eyes flashed, and the True Force sword that had been in front of Guhan immediately flew towards Zunaida's forehead. Imprint of the Swordsman was one of the moves of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. It allowed the user to control the flying sword remotely through the sword element. It looked similar to the flying sword technique of Taoism. Or could it be that this was originally a Daoist technique? This was different from the last time lightning had fought. This time, the True Force sword flew at a very slow speed, no different from a bird. Zunaida brandished the black dragon spear and easily blocked the True Force sword. Something's wrong. Zunaida felt his wrist sink. The True Force sword that he had blocked wasn't sent flying away like he had imagined. Rather, it was firmly pressed against the shaft of his dragon spear. Zunaida could feel that the strength that the True Force sword was exerting on his spear shaft was gradually increasing. 30%. Zunaida clenched his teeth. He used 30% of his strength to barely contend with the True Force sword's attack. 60%. Guhan doubled the amount of sword element he exerted on the True Force sword. 80%. Zunaida could feel that his black dragon spear would soon collapse. This was a weapon formed from his milk teeth and it was intimately connected to his soul. He was well aware that the black dragon spear was on the verge of collapse. Retreat. I can't continue fighting with this human. Zunaida wasn't a pedantic dragon. Fighting with Guhan in human form was far too disadvantageous for him. Zunaida decided to transform into his dragon form once more. You want to retreat? How naive. In that instant, Guhan released all of the strength in his body through the True Force sword. This caught Zunaida off guard and he was sent flying away by the True Force sword. Even the shaft of the black dragon spear wasn't able to withstand half of Guhan's strength. The True Force sword pierced through it and broke it in two. System, you have destroyed the black dragon spear of Yuan Ku Black Dragon King Zunaida. System, you have dealt minus 13,569 damage to the Black Dragon King Yuan Ku Black Dragon King Zunaida. My black dragon spear. As Zunaida saw the two halves of the black dragon spear in his hand, he wanted to cry but no tears came out. This was a weapon that had accompanied him for over 4,000 years, and yet it had been broken like this. Human, you will pay the price for your stupidity. You have truly enraged the great Black Dragon King Zunaida. The Black Dragon King Zunaida, who had flown into the air, turned back into the black dragon that had casually mocked Guhan and reappeared on the peak of Wudong Mountain. He opened his dragon mouth, and a ball of dragon flames gathered once more. This ball of dragon flames couldn't compare to the dragon flames from before. If the previous dragon flames were black flames, then this ball of dragon flames was basically a black hole. If Guhan was still in Zunaida's mouth, he would definitely feel that there was no heat in this ball of dragon flames. On the contrary, there was an endless chill, as if the temperature and emotions of the entire world had been absorbed by this black hole. Yes, this was not the dragon race's basic attack dragon flames, but the black dragon race's ultimate technique, the fear hollow. Once this black hole was spat out, it could absorb all positive emotions within a relatively large range, and infinitely amplify negative emotions. In Zunaida's world, only a powerful psyche cultivator, such as a god of magic, could use a barrier to resist this move. Other humans, even sword saints, would lose all desire to fight if they were attacked head-on. They would be immersed in pain and lose the ability to fight, and it would be normal for those with a weaker psyche to just kill themselves. That black hole, I can't let it hit me. Guhan's sharp senses told him that he absolutely could not let that black hole of dragon flames hit him. Guhan's intuition was very accurate. With Guhan's mind full of negative emotions, once he was hit by this fear hollow, he would probably break down in an instant and commit suicide to meet his parents. Guhan made up his mind, and the true force sword that had stopped in the air immediately shot upwards, piercing straight into Zunaida's mouth. 9 swords of black heaven, abyssal sword. The last time Guhan used abyssal sword was against the ghost tier Yuan Ku Gang Ya. Back then, abyssal sword had only released 6 sword beams, which pierced through Gang Ya's forehead. That was because the sword essence in Guhan's body was 10,000 quarks. Now, however, the sword essence in Guhan's body was 1 million quarks, 1,000 times more than back then. Now that he used abyssal sword, it was impossible to see how many sword beams Guhan had released with the naked eye. All that could be seen was a sky full of sword beams blossoming from Zunaida's mouth. The mouth was the weakest point of any animal, and dragons were no exception. The result of countless sword beams wreaking havoc in Zunaida's mouth was that Zunaida could no longer control the channeling bar for the fear black hole. The energy directly exploded in Zunaida's mouth. P.S. Back in the dungeon, Guhan had obtained 10,000 quarks of sword essence from the King of Yu's Gojian sword scar. However, after exiting the dungeon, the original King of Yu was taken back, and Guhan later obtained a new King of Yu. At that time, the reward of 10,000 quarks of sword essence had already been removed. So, this is not a bug. Gentle moon. Zunaida let out a mournful cry. It remembered the happy days when it and Gentle Moon were together. It remembered the happy days when the two of them wreaked havoc in Dragon Valley, causing the entire dragon race to be unable to rest in peace. It also remembered Gentle Moon piercing its heart and nailing it to the dragon beheading platform in an attempt to steal its dragon soul. Gentle Moon. Why? Zunaida kept hissing, even if it was a dragon. The energy of the fear black hole did not hit Guhan. Instead, it directly hit Zunaida's head, causing Zunaida to sink into the pain and confusion of love. Countless beautiful memories turned into venomous snakes, binding Zunaida's body. I'll kill him while he's down. Under Guhan's control, the tip of the true force sword was aimed at Zunaida's reverse scale. As long as Guhan stabbed with all his might, Zunaida's half-life would basically end here. Damn it! At this critical moment, Zunaida broke out of its confused state. Then, with a swipe of its dragon claws, it slapped the true force sword away from the edge of its reverse scale. After all, it was a member of the obsidian black dragon race that was naturally immune to magic. If this fear black hole was not spiritual magic but elemental magic, Zunaida would probably not be harmed at all. Human, you're the one who made Zunaida relive that painful memory. Zunaida, who had woken up, was covered in flames. This meant that it had sunk into a state of rage. You'll pay the price for this. Noisy. Guhan snorted coldly. What a pity. If Zunaida had woken up just a little slower, its reverse scale would have been pierced by him. Then, even if it did not die, it would be half dead. Since that was the case, then he would use the power of an immortal sword to fight this obsidian black dragon head-on. Guhan suddenly exerted force, and the true force sword turned into a stream of light, cutting a bloody wound on the left side of Zunaida's body. Go to hell! Seeing that it was injured, Zunaida was furious. With a flap of its wings, more than 10 fireballs of dragon flame crashed toward the top of the mountain like a meteor shower. If these fireballs hit even half of them, the entire top of the mountain would probably be shaved off. Those survivors who were running away, as well as the old Taoist priest of refinement, would all die. Immeasurable heavenly venerate. Refinement put its palms together and closed its eyes, as if waiting for death to come. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the spring. In order to protect refinement, his savior, Guhan had no choice but to use another move from the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the spring. This move required a total of 30,000 sword chi to be used. Be it in real life or in the game, Guhan had never used this move before. One had to know that the sword essences of a famed sword-level swordsman could only be converted into 100,000 sword chi, which was just enough to use Sword of the Spring 3 times. If not for the 1 million sword essences of an immortal sword, Guhan would not have been able to use this move at all. However, Guhan was already familiar with this move. At this moment, the tip of the True Force sword was like the nozzle of a fountain. Large amounts of sword chi gushed out, forming an umbrella that blocked all of the fireballs of dragon flame that Zunaida shot out. Shun Aida stared blankly. His attack had been blocked so easily. In that brief moment of distraction, the True Force sword launched another attack and landed a heavy blow on Zunaida's dragon horn. Sparks flew in all directions in an instant, and the sound of a zither rang out as a deep gash was left on the dragon horn. "How dare you injure my dragon horn?" Zunaida did not know how many times it had flown into a rage today. The dragon horn and reverse scale were the most precious parts of the dragon race, just like a human's face. Once it was damaged, it would not rest until one of them died. Absolute barrier. Zunaida was afraid that its dragon horn would be damaged again, so it used the dragon language spell Absolute Barrier. As long as its magic power did not stop flowing, the absolute barrier would not break. Chapter 87. D*Mnet, I can't break the barrier on its body at all. In the next few minutes, Guhan launched a frenzied attack on Zunaida. The True Force sword flew in the air, trying to stab into Zunaida's body from all angles. However, against the barrier formed by Zunaida's magic, there was nothing it could do. After all, they were both at the universe level and immortal sword tier. In terms of sword essence and magic content, there was not much of a difference. Guhan could not break through Zunaida's defense, but that did not mean that Zunaida could not break through Guhan's defense. Other than forbidden spells, Zunaida had used almost all of its 9th level spells in the short span of a few minutes. All sorts of ice rain, fire rain, bursting flames, spatial slashes, and other offensive spells rained down on Guhan's head. Guhan could not fly, so he could only stand on the top of Wudang Mountain. To ensure that this foothold was not destroyed, Guhan could only use the Sword of the Spring continuously to block the spells. The Sword of the Spring was 30,000 sword chi per use. Even with 1 million sword essences, it was not enough for Guhan to squander. Once the sword essences in Guhan's body were exhausted, he would be dead. But from another perspective, it did not matter. There were less than 2 minutes left until Yangjing City's reinforcements arrived. In the next 2 minutes, Guhan only needed to keep using the Sword of the Spring and drag it out until the end of the dungeon. However, Guhan did not intend to accept such an ending. He had finally grasped the strength of an immortal sword tier, and it would be a waste of this rare opportunity to drag it out like this. Perhaps in this lifetime, Guhan would not have the chance to taste the power of an immortal sword tier sword wielder again. Guhan had to break its shell no matter what and cut a piece of dragon meat from Zunaida's body. It was not that Guhan could not break Zunaida's shell. This was because the strongest killer move in the 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, Sword Dipperdome, was still in Guhan's hands. This move required 1 million sword chi to be used, and it could crush everything below the Emperor Sword. However, there was a very important prerequisite for using Sword Dome. When using this move, the sword had to be in contact with Guhan's body. In other words, it had to be held in Guhan's hand. This was because it was impossible to transmit such a huge amount of sword essence through the use of flying swords. True Force sword, take me with you. Guhan gave the order. The True Force sword, which had been blocking the open sword spring in front of him, immediately flew back to Guhan. This time, however, he had Guhan on the hilt of the sword. What does that human want? Zunaida had a bad feeling when he saw Guhan fly above his head under the guidance of the True Force sword. Spatial Ripple. Zunaida used a 9th grade spatial spell. As a dragon, 9th grade spells were the limit of its instantaneous casting. Spells of even higher grade would require a certain channeling time, just like when he used Black Hole of Fear. If he was interrupted by Guhan again, it would not be worth it. Space Ripple was a kind of space ripple that was 1 kilometer in diameter radiating from the body of the giant dragon. It was an AoE skill that could not be dodged. This spatial ripple could shatter the entire structure of space, and if one was hit, their entire body would shatter along with the space around them. The umbrella-shaped sword chi of everlasting sword spring gushed out, colliding head-on with the spreading spatial ripple. The sword chi of everlasting sword spring was easily pulverized by the spatial ripple, but the spatial ripple that collided head-on with the everlasting sword spring was also delayed for a moment. Instantly, a gap appeared, and Ji Yuhan turned and passed through it, landing on top of Junaida's head. Zunaida had not expected Guhan to be able to break through the spatial ripple's banishment head-on. This practically gave it no time to react or escape, and Guhan actually landed on top of Zunaida's absolute barrier. Take this, Sword Dome. Logically speaking, an ultimate move that required 1 million sword chis to be unleashed should have a special effect that was off the charts. Even if it did not explode like an atomic bomb, it should be as powerful as a railgun. However, the sword dome had no effect at all. It looked as simple as Guhan picking up his sword and stabbing it lightly at the absolute barrier. And then, the absolute barrier that Zunaida was so proud of completely shattered. System notification: you have broken through the absolute barrier. Take this, sword descends to the abyss. If not for the fact that sword dome could not be used consecutively, Guhan would have given Zunaida another sword dome instead of sword descends to the abyss. Countless sword chi gushed out of the true force sword at the same time, washing over Zunaida's dragon body from all angles and directions. After the absolute barrier was broken, Zunaida could not release any defensive magic for a short period of time. It could only let the sword chi leave bloody marks on its dragon body. System notification: one survivor has died. Survivors remaining, 753. Total number of dead survivors, 2. When Guhan returned to the ground, he realized that the attack range of the spatial ripple seemed to have just destroyed Skyward Palace. Without the protection of his open sword spring, Skyward Palace no longer existed. Under the attack of the spatial ripple, both Skyward Palace and the old Taoist master refinement were turned into spatial dust, leaving not a trace behind. Guhan was in a terrible mood. Zunaida was in a terrible mood as well. The wounds left from the battle with Sword Maiden Zhenwu had not fully healed. She had extremely corrosive damage, so Zunaida did not dare to fight Guhan in close combat. He was deeply afraid that a few more unhealable wounds would appear on his body. He had already lost half of his dragon blood in the last battle. If he continued to lose dragon blood, he might really die here. That was why Zunaida had used the absolute barrier, which consumed a lot of mana. In his opinion, unless he focused all his attacks on the millimeter-level three-headed golden dragon's forbidden spell, no one or space could directly break through his absolute barrier. However, he had miscalculated. Jian Do Qiong's attack was even more powerful than the Golden Dragon Tooth's attack. In an instant, it broke through the absolute barrier and left far more wounds on his body than the last time. Damn it! So many wounds. My dragon blood will run dry in less than half an hour. After counting the number of wounds on its body, Zunaida instinctively wanted to flee. With such severe wounds that could not be healed by the dragon race's powerful regenerative abilities, let alone continue fighting, whether it could even survive was a problem. A good dragon knows better than to fight when the odds are against it. Zunaida is not as stubborn as those light dragons. Zunaida's life is more important. Zunaida sneezed, intending to flap his wings and escape. Wait. No, the wounds this time seemed to be different from the last time. Zunaida suddenly discovered that the wounds he had just suffered were rapidly healing. In less than 5 seconds, they were as good as new, and there were no signs of damage. Originally, this was a very normal thing for a WM. The amazing healing ability was originally an important weight for WMS to dominate the world. But in the battle 3 days ago, the sword in the Sword Maiden's hand had left a wound that had only just healed. Could it be that this sword isn't the same as the one from that day? Zunaida was overjoyed. If that was really the case, then there was nothing to fear from the true force sword. He could completely withstand Guhan's injuries and forcefully attack him. Human, how dare you deceive the great King Zunaida like this? Realizing that he had been thinking too highly of himself by using long-range attacks and had almost been cut to death by Guhan, Zunaida felt that his entire dragon personality had been insulted by Guhan. As a member of the obsidian black dragon race with the strongest close combat abilities, he was actually stupid enough to clash magic with his opponent. What was the difference between this and a liberal arts student competing in mathematics? Zunaida crouched down, and a pair of dragon claws began to flash with black electricity. This was the obsidian black dragon race's origin energy, the darkest flames that could even ignite sunlight. It was the obsidian black dragon race's strongest killer move, and even if the obsidian black dragon race's archenemy, the three-headed golden dragon, came into contact with a terrifying flame that would easily cripple half of its battle prowess. Logically speaking, with Guhan's current state as a half-divine sword-tier sword wielder, he would definitely die if he came into contact with this dark flame. There would be no exceptions, no matter how powerful his cheat code was. Finally planning to fight me in close combat. On the ground, Guhan got into a stance and prepared to receive Zunaida's attack. Because Zunaida had not appeared in a dungeon since the Battle of Wudang's sect, there had never been an accurate calculation of Zunaida's true abilities on the forum. Guhan had no idea how terrifying the dark flame on his opponent's claws were. He was still prepared to fight Zunaida head-on. He also did not know that 3 days ago, Sword Mistress Zhenwu's personal shield had been breached by the dark flame, and she had finally died a tragic death. Because Guhan had not received the recognition of the Zhenwu sword, and could not synchronize with her. "Evil creature, don't you dare harm my human race." Another voice suddenly came from the sky. Just as Guhan was about to dive fearlessly to the dark flame, Yangjing City's reinforcements, another divine sword-tier sword wielder, finally arrived at the peak of Wudang Mountain. Zunaida did not care about this sword wielder's rebuke. Although it could faintly sense that the other human that had suddenly appeared in the sky was no weaker than Guhan, so what? It would kill Guhan first, and then deal with the newcomer would not be too late. "Evil creature, don't you understand what I'm saying?" The divine sword-tier sword wielder in the sky berated, and soon after, Guhan's pupils contracted. An indescribably huge sword of light slashed down from the depths of the clouds. Compared to this light sword, Zunaida's dragon body, which was the size of a White House, actually became as laughable as a pheasant. In the next second, although Zunaida was not cut in half by the huge sword, the whole dragon was sent flying like a baseball. With a beautiful home run, this Yun-level Yuan Ku giant dragon was sent flying hundreds of kilometers away. Didn't they say that Heavenly Master Zhijing had already ascended? Why is there another divine sword-tier sword wielder here? In the afterglow of the setting sun, a figure appeared in the clouds. Guhan's eyes began to blur, and he could not see the face of the sword wielder clearly. He only saw that he was alone, holding a sword in his hand, and the sword mistress was nowhere to be seen. Could he be the sword mistress too? This thought flashed through Guhan's mind, and he felt like his head was about to explode in extreme pain. Too weak. This was the last thing that Guhan heard that person say. System. Warning, warning. Player military governor's spiritual energy has been overloaded. Spiritual energy has been overloaded. System has been automatically offline. System has been automatically offline. System. Warning, warning. Player military governor's spiritual energy has been overloaded. Spiritual energy has been overloaded. System has been automatically offline. System has been automatically offline. System. Warning, warning. Player military governor's spiritual energy has been overloaded. Spiritual energy has been overloaded. System has been automatically offline. System has been automatically offline. Chapter 88. You have a new message, offline message from the game Sword Maiden Online. Player Guhan, according to the system's examination, your mental state is abnormal. Please head to the medical center for a detailed examination of your brain condition. Before receiving a safety clearance from the medical center, you will not be able to log into the game. You have a new message, offline message from the game Sword Maiden Online. Player Guhan, you have died in the game. As a punishment, you will not be able to log into the game for the next 3 days. Please value your in-game life, do not ignore death. You have a new message, offline message from the game Sword Maiden Online. Player Guhan, Your Instance Dungeon Wudong's Apex has been completed. Please head to the Instance Dungeon Settlement Center to receive your reward after logging into the game. You have a missed call, 14, from your good friend, Songhammer. I think I was forcefully logged out of the game. Ji Han shook his dizzy head. Using his current strength to control the power of the immortal sword tier, even if it was just a virtual power in the game, was indeed not something that he could bear. Looking at the clock on the wall, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning the next day. Gu Han had been forcefully logged out of the game at 6 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday. He had slept for a full 14 hours before barely waking up. But why did I die in the game? Noticing the offline message on the next day, Gu Han was a little surprised. He clearly remembered that before he fainted, the sword wielder of the Yangjing city who had rushed over to help had already sent Tsunida flying. There was no reason for him to die in the Instance dungeon. Could it be that he had overexerted his mental state, causing his brain to explode and die? Gu Han decided to put this news aside for the time being, because at this moment, a cute little girl sat directly between Gu Han's legs. Gu Han, Qingpin is hungry. When Qingpin said this, coupled with the aggrieved expression on her face, it immediately made Gu Han feel a strong sense of shame. I actually let my own sword Maiden go hungry. This is unforgivable. I'll cook for you. Gu Han patted Qingpin's little face and put her aside. He put on his shoes and tidied himself up a little. In the past, when he lived alone, he could be slovenly, but now that there was a little Qingpin in the house, he had to pay attention to his appearance. Gu Han, do you still want to make sour and spicy shredded potatoes? Qingpin stood on the bed, her feet wrapped in cotton socks bouncing up and down. Yeah, are you happy? Isn't the hot and sour shredded potatoes I made delicious? You fell in love with its taste after eating it once. Gu Han laughed. His spicy and sour shredded potatoes were second to none. Song Hammer and his two sisters-in-law would come over whenever they had the chance to freeload. It's not delicious. Unexpectedly, Qingpin shook her head in disdain. Her words fully expressed her disdain for Gu Han's cooking. Gu Han's shredded potatoes taste terrible. Qingpin doesn't like it. Qingpin's little stomach tells Qingpin that such terrible shredded potatoes shouldn't exist in this world. Hee hee. Gu Han's face twitched. This was a little embarrassing. There was actually someone who didn't like his spicy and sour shredded potatoes. Then, Qingpin, what do you want to eat? Meat. Qingpin forcefully said this word. Qingpin wants to eat meat. Potatoes are something that Western barbarians eat. Qingpin is an Easterner, and Easterners want to eat meat. I understand. You actually don't want to eat potatoes. You want to eat meat, right? Gu Han reacted and felt much better. As long as his shredded potatoes didn't taste terrible, it was enough. However, it was also troublesome for Qingpin to want to eat meat. This was because Gu Han's family rarely had meat. Other than the years when he had just started practicing swordsmanship, where he ate large amounts of artificial meat to replenish his body's energy, Gu Han would never eat meat. It wasn't that Ji Han didn't like to eat meat, but it was because meat was too much for Ji Han's living expenses. Even if it was artificially fried and tasteless synthetic meat, it was still more than the price of 20 potatoes. However, since Qingpin wanted to eat meat, Gu Han had to satisfy her no matter what. After all, Gu Han was now a swordsman. He enjoyed more living allowances and privileges. Even if it was natural pork, it was within the range of Gu Han's wallet to occasionally taste it. Alright, your big brother Gu Han will bring Qingpin to eat meat today. Gu Han glanced at the remaining RMB in his personal terminal. There were about 2,000 renminbi left. This was the last of Gu Han's wealth in the real world. It would not be a problem to support a pork feast. Meat. Meat. Qingpin's eyes seemed to have turned into a pair of pink stars. She jumped up from the bed and landed accurately in Gu Han's arms a few meters away. Gu Han, let's go eat meat now. No problem. Gu Han smiled. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that Qingpin seemed to have been wearing the emerald green floral dress that he had brought with him after his awakening. Oh, I'm confused. I forgot to buy some clothes for Qingpin when I came back the day before yesterday. Gu Han patted his head. He decided to buy some matching clothes for Qingpin when he brought her out for a meal later. Oh right, I haven't changed my clothes for 2 to 3 years. I should buy myself a decent set of clothes. From this point, it could be seen that the solid cold had changed a lot. Just a week ago, it would have been impossible for Guhan to take the initiative to buy clothes for himself and another girl. The heavy hatred and the strong desire to become a sword wielder had suppressed Guhan to the point that he was not interested in anything else. Your friend, Song Hammer, is requesting a call. Would you like to accept? Song Hammer suddenly picked up the call when he was about to leave the house. Hey, Sour Popsicle. What happened to you yesterday? I tried to contact you the whole night, but you didn't pick up my call. I couldn't see you in the game either. I thought you were dead. Only then did Ji Yuhan remember that among the long list of notifications, there seemed to be 14 missed calls from a certain person. I've been too tired for the past few days, so I went to bed early. What's up? Guhan was indeed sleeping. He did not lie to Song Hammer. Sour Popsicle, don't you usually pull all-nighters for a week? Why are you sleeping so early today? Song Hammer muttered on the other end of the call. It's about what I told you last time. My mother's friend wants to meet you now. She wants to know if you're free today. Guhan thought for a moment. Since he could not log into the game for 3 days, and it would take another 2 days for him to report to Yuzhong University, he could take 2 days off. It would be good to meet the woman who wanted to buy his spot. Sure. Send her my terminal number and ask her to arrange a time with me. Okay. Song Hammer quickly hung up. It was unknown if she was contacting her mother's friend. Seeing that it was almost time for the restaurant, Guhan carried Qingpin, who could not wait any longer. He opened the entrance of the slide and was ready to slide down to the first floor. Unknown number, 5613-259-7458. Requesting communication connection. Do you want to accept? That's fast. Guhan muttered as he accepted the call. Hey, if you want to meet me, you can choose a place, Guhan said calmly. Military governor, you're really brave. The last person who tried to seduce me was sent to NetEase to raise pigs. The person on the other end of the call retorted fiercely. NetEase Pig Farm was the largest pig farm in the world. It was responsible for supplying 70% of the world's natural pork. However, the lifespan of the people who worked at NetEase Pig Farm was not very long. It was difficult for them to live past 40 years old. Weren't you the one who wanted to meet me today? After saying this, Guhan immediately realized that the voice on the other end of the call was indeed a mature woman's voice. However, this voice sounded strangely familiar. Bright Moon, is that you? The owner of this voice was the famous sword wielder, Bright Moon, who had fought with Guhan in the Jinyuan Garrison Crusade mission. However, how did this woman know his personal terminal number in real life? Alright, there was no need to think about it. She must have gotten it from that big mouth, Song Hammer. It's me. Seeing that you can still recognize my voice, I'll let you go. Bright Moon smiled. Guhan, I'm hungry. I want meat. Qingpin will bite you. Realizing that Guhan was standing still on the ground, Qingpin, who was in her arms, grabbed one of Guhan's fingers and bit it without hesitation. Whoa! Qingpin's teeth were not fully developed yet, but they were unusually sharp. Guhan screamed in pain and pulled out his finger to take a look. Damn, there was a bloody mark on it. What's wrong? Why are you suddenly crying like a ghost? Bright Moon asked with concern when she heard Guhan's scream. I'm very busy. Why are you looking for me? I'll give you 10 seconds to explain yourself. I'll hang up in 10 seconds. I'll keep my promise. Guhan did not want to be bitten by Qingpin again. How could this little guy's teeth be so powerful? You brat, how dare you talk to your big sister like this? You have 7 seconds left. I have a friend who wants to interview you. I hope you can find time to meet with her. Interview me? Guhan was stunned. Interview me for what? You're the first SSS rank player in Sword Maiden Online to clear the initial dungeon, military governor. Don't you know that the price for an interview on the forum has already reached 30,000 renminbi? Why do you think I want to interview you? 30,000 renminbi. Guhan thought of the pitiful amount of RMB he had left and the little meat eating lowly beside him. He immediately did not resist the interview. Sure, but I have a few requests. First, I want 25,000 renminbi out of the 30,000 renminbi. Second, I will only accept interviews in the game. Not in real life. Guhan quickly stated his conditions. Alright, I'll agree on her behalf. I'll contact you when the time comes. Let's go. We're going to eat meat. Guhan shook the impatient Ching Pin in his arms and stepped down the slide. Unknown number, 5682-543-1456. Requesting communication. Do you want to? No. Guhan's answer was very straightforward. Why were there so many calls today? Chapter 89. Mom, is that uncle not picking up our calls? In a room that was decorated very simply, to the point that apart from a bed, nothing else could be seen. A girl slightly older than Qingpin was hugging her mother, and her mother couldn't help but shed bitter tears. Back to the topic, let's turn our attention back to Guhan. In the entire Yuzhong base city, there weren't many restaurants that served pork. The most famous one was probably a pork restaurant called Chanel. Legend has it that 1,000 years ago, Chanel was already a famous luxury store overseas. Is there any luxury item in this world that's more expensive than a pound of natural pork? None. Therefore, Chanel must have been selling pork 1,000 years ago. A history expert said. However, Chanel was considered a very commoner's luxury pork store. At 11 o'clock in the afternoon, when lunchtime had just started and Chanel had just opened for business, the entire store was already packed with people who came to eat pork. Guhan was only late for 20 minutes, but there was almost no place to sit in the entire restaurant. So it's Mr. Guhan, welcome. But I'm very sorry, as you can see, there are no empty seats in the restaurant now, can you? After scanning Guhan's personal terminal and discovering that he was a citizen, the waiter's attitude toward Guhan immediately became a lot more respectful. In this base city, anyone who was a citizen was not to be trifled with. Do you mean, should we go out, or should we wait here for a while? It didn't matter if Guhan waited for a while, but the little lowly Qingpin he was hugging was already drooling while staring at his fingers. If he waited any longer, she would probably bite off a piece of meat from his body. No, I mean, can you share a table with other customers first? The waiter said carefully. Many of the citizens were arrogant, but when they heard the waiter's suggestion to share a table, they immediately became pretentious and cursed at the waiter. If it wasn't for the fact that Chanel was backed by the Heng Shan sect, there were even people who would have flipped the table. That's fine. As long as you serve the dishes quickly. My precious sword maiden is starving. Guhan flicked Qingpin's cute little nose, indicating that this was his precious sword maiden. So it's the esteemed Lord Swordsman. The waiter took a deep breath and became even more respectful. He almost bent over and led Guhan to a table that was only occupied by one person. Sitting in front of this table was a big and burly man. His casual clothes were pulled up to his chest, revealing a round beer belly. One of his feet stepped on the chair next to him. This posture was no different from that of a hooligan. There were no dishes on the table, but there were already 2 empty beer bottles. Drinking beer on an empty stomach, this man was really a man. Yo, there's a cute boy. Come, accompany uncle to drink. The burly man said casually. Looking at his age of 30, he was more than old enough to be Guhan's uncle. Why don't you have any manners? Before Guhan could lose his temper, the waiter unhappily criticized the burly man. This is the esteemed Lord Swordsman, a warrior who fights for the future of mankind. Unlike you, who only knows how to drink and is completely useless. Lord Guhan, don't mind him. I'll find you someone to share a table with. Don't sit with this vulgar fellow. The waiter pulled Guhan away. Don't. I was wrong. The burly man hurriedly apologized and grabbed Guhan's collar. Hehe, so you're the esteemed Lord Swordsman. I was blind. Let me treat you to a drink. How about the authentic Shakesing Nu Hong? There was still an authentic Shakesing Nu Hong in this day and age. Even the current geographers had different opinions on where Shakesing was located. Currently, the Shakesing Nu Hong sold on the market was said to be brewed by a machine that was created by the 100th generation of Shakesing's descendants. Guhan, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. The surrounding was filled with the aroma of pork, causing Qingpin to drool. She couldn't wait to sit down and eat the meat right now. She didn't want to walk any further. Forget it, let's do it here. Just hurry up and serve the dishes. Guhan didn't mind the burly man and didn't want to wait any longer. He directly sat across from him. All right, then Lord, what dishes would you like to order? How many pounds of meat? Is it synthetic or natural? Can you introduce some dishes to me? What dishes do you have? All right. The waiter tapped the personal terminal on his wrist. Pictures of delicious dishes appeared in the air. Since you came to Chanel, there are 3 dishes that you have to order. These 3 dishes are our signature dishes. Everyone who tried them said they were delicious. Look at this steamed pork with rice flour. It's made from the most tender and juicy pork belly of the pig. Paired with rice flour, lotus root, and taro, the steamed meat is fatty but not greasy. The sauce is very fragrant, and the taste is salty and sweet. It's a lingering aftertaste. Look at this picture. Filet mignon pork chop. This is a recipe left behind from ancient times. Using the best filet mignon pork tenderloin, drizzled with white wine, butter, and other exquisite sauces, it's a delicious taste. I guarantee that after you eat one, you'll want another. This last one is the most powerful one. It's the legendary Dongpa pork passed down from ancient times by the sage Su Dongpa. Legend has it that Su Dongpa saw an eagle chasing after a pigeon one day. Su Dongpa took pity on the pigeon and told the eagle to let the pigeon go. It's also a life. The eagle refused. The eagle said that if I let the pigeon go, I'll starve to death. Is the pigeon's life important and my life isn't? Su Dongpa is indeed a great sage. When he heard this, he said, "How about this? I'll cut off my flesh for you to eat in exchange for the pigeon's life." When the eagle heard this, he felt that it was a good feeling. So, he found seasonings like rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea. He cut off Su Dongpa's flesh and stewed them together to make this famous Dongpa pork. What happened after that? What happened after that? Qingpin, who was fascinated by the story, hurriedly asked. After that, the eagle and the pigeon lived happily together. What about Su Dongpa? Su Dongpa cut off so much flesh. Naturally, he died. Tricks. This eagle and pigeon were full of tricks. Wow, Qingpin wants to eat Dongpa pork. Qingpin wants to eat Dongpa pork. After hearing this touching story, Qingpin suddenly had a good impression of Dongpa pork. He clamored to eat Dongpa pork. Waiter, give me steamed rice flour pork, filet mignon pork, and Dongpa pork. Also, give me some side dishes and 2 bowls of rice. Guhan bitterly smiled and shook his head. According to the information he found, the one who cut off the meat to feed the eagle was Shimen Qing. What does this have to do with Su Dongpa? Do you want synthetic meat or natural meat? The waiter asked again. What's the price of synthetic meat? What's the price of natural meat? This synthetic meat is 50 renminbi per catty. Natural meat is 800 renminbi per catty. How many catties of natural pork do you want? The waiter's words immediately set the price above natural meat. Natural. Natural. Qingpin wants to eat natural meat. Well, Guhan didn't need to choose. Qingpin had already made his choice. Guhan was helpless. He could only nod his head and said, 1 catty of each dish. Guhan's personal terminal only had 2,000 renminbi left. It was exactly the price of 3 catties of meat. The waiter happily returned to the kitchen. Only Guhan, Qingpin, and the strong man who was drinking beer were left on the table. The burly man drained a large glass of beer, then mysteriously moved closer to the poor man's side and whispered, "This sword lady, don't be fooled by that waiter. The one who cut the meat to feed the eagle is not that Su Dongpa, but that Wang Anshi." The dishes ordered by Guhan and the strong man were almost sent to the table at the same time. Guhan arrived more than 10 minutes later than the strong man, but the dishes were served at the same time. It could be seen that the kitchen really sped up for Guhan. Guhan didn't touch the 3 meat dishes. He just picked up some dried radish and ate 2 bowls of rice. As for Qingpin, she looked very domineering. Because she was not tall enough, she directly stood on both of Guhan's legs. She picked up a large piece of steamed pork with rice with one chopstick and held a piece of dongpa pork with the other hand. She took a bite and directly stuffed it into her mouth. It could be seen that the strong man wanted to talk to Guhan very much. While eating, he kept looking for topics to get close to Guhan. For such a person, Guhan didn't even pay attention to him. She lowered her head and buried herself in eating without replying, which made the strong man feel bored. 1 meal of 3 catties of meat. For an adult, it was a very huge weight. After eating 3 catties of meat, there was basically nothing else in the stomach. But Qingpin was different. Although she was a little Lolita, 3 catties of meat was not enough to fill her stomach. After sending the last bite of steamed pork with rice into her mouth, Qingpin's greasy hand directly reached out to Guhan's face. Guhan, Qingpin wants more, Qingpin wants more. Wait. Guhan reacted quickly and grabbed Qingpin's small hand to prevent her from approaching his face. No money. I don't have time to give you food. I still have to buy clothes for you later. Wipe your hand and we'll go. No, I want to eat meat. Qingpin refused. She pouted and raised her mouth high. Her hands desperately wanted to scratch Guhan's body. Waiter, give me another 3 catties of dongpa pork. Suddenly, the strong man on the opposite side shouted, which made the waiter next to him startled. Okay, it's coming. The waiter smiled and went to place the order. The strong man patted the table and said, Sword lady, come and chat with Uncle Luo. Uncle Luo will treat you to meat. Okay. Uncle Luo is so nice. Immediately, she happily chatted with that Uncle Luo. As the saying goes, whoever has meat is a mother. Chapter 90. From 11:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., Qingpin ate for a full 3 hours. The plates on the table were piled up to half a meter high, and this was the result after the waiters came to clean it up 5 times. However, the waiters weren't surprised, because sword maidens often came to Chanel to eat. For example, a famous swordswoman who came last time ate even more than Qingpin. By continuously providing delicious meat to Qingpin, the brawny man and Qingpin became closer. Now, Qingpin directly sat on the table next to the brawny man and stuffed food into his mouth. Little lady Qingpin, why don't you follow my Uncle Luo in the future? Your swordsman's master is poor and can't afford to raise you. Uncle Luo will treat you to barbecue every day, how about that? This Uncle Luo finally revealed his true colors of kissing Qingpin and eating meat. It turned out that he wanted to kidnap Qingpin. Guhan couldn't take it anymore. He wanted to stand up and teach this man who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. Abducting a sword mistress in the middle of the street was a crime punishable by death by shooting. Beating him up was already a light punishment. However, before Guhan could make a move, a large plate of dongpa pork filled with the aroma of wine and syrup was thrown at Uncle Luo's face. Uncle Luo's face instantly looked like it was covered in feces. Don't think that you can bribe Qingpin just by treating Qingpin to some meat. Qingpin is Guhan's precious sword maiden. Qingpin likes Guhan the most. After saying that, Qingpin jumped up from the table proudly and threw herself into Guhan's arms. Idiot Guhan, our Qingpin's stomach is bulging. Let's go buy clothes. Then, Guhan carried Qingpin and left. None of the waiters present dared to stop him. Only Uncle Luo, who had a bitter look on his face, was left sitting in his seat. Sir, do you want to settle the bill? The waiter who had led Guhan in at the beginning walked over with trepidation, deeply afraid that the other party would suddenly attack and hurt him. But she had no choice. She was the one who brought Guhan in. She should be responsible for paying the bill. I'll pay. How much do you want? Uncle Luo wiped a piece of dongpa meat off his face and raised the personal terminal on his wrist, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The 3 of you ate a total of 108 pounds of natural pork, which is worth 86,400 renminbi. We will round off the change for you, and you can just pay us 86,000 renminbi. He actually ate so much. Uncle Luo's face twitched unnaturally a few times. This was 86,000 renminbi, which was the cost of living of a small family for about 3 years. Even if it was him, it would be a price that would make his heart ache for a few days. Hurry up and transfer the money before I regret it. After hearing Uncle Luo's words, the waiter was startled. He quickly swiped away 86,000 renminbi from Uncle Luo's personal terminal. I've just coordinated the sword bearer for 2 days. Uncle Luo revealed a smirk. You won't be able to pay me back in this lifetime after cheating your Uncle Luo's money. Qing Pin. Guhan suddenly called Qing Pin's name while walking on the road. What? Qing Pin turned around and looked at Guhan with a puzzled look. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yuhan took advantage of the moment the poor boy turned his head, and immediately lowered his head and kissed the poor boy's cheek heavily. What a fragrant little face, it was filled with the smell of green apples. After secretly kissing Qing Pin, Guhan instantly regretted it. His face also turned red. What's wrong with me? How did I become like a pervert? I actually kissed my sword lady secretly. Is this still the Guhan who is determined to avenge his parents and doesn't get close to women? But then again, it seems that about 40% of the sword bearers have a certain level of friendship with their sword lady. Baba, what the hell am I thinking? That's right, I must have been touched by Qing Pin's action of smashing that vulgar man's face just now. That's why I kissed Qing Pin like that. I'm just emotional, I don't have any other thoughts. Guhan struggled in his heart for a long time before he finally convinced himself that everything was just emotional. Guhan, your saliva is so smelly. Qing Pin, wipe it. Qing Pin used his still greasy little hand to wipe his face where Guhan kissed him. Then, he sniffed his little hand and made such a judgment. He didn't know whether she smelled the stench of Guhan's saliva or the meat on his hand. Look at your face, it's all greasy. Guhan glanced at Qing Pin's shiny face, then looked at his own shirt that was also greasy from Qing Pin's rubbing. He suddenly felt a little disgusted. Qing Pin, come down, I'm tired of carrying you. After saying that, he squatted down and was about to put Qing Pin down. I don't want to. Qing Pin don't want to come down. When Qing Pin saw that Guhan wanted to put him down, he immediately grabbed Guhan's collar and desperately climbed up Guhan's neck. I don't want to come down, Qing Pin is tired, Qing Pin's belly is bloated, Qing Pin is pregnant, Qing Pin don't want to come down. Stinky Guhan, bad Guhan, you just secretly kissed Qing Pin, and now you're going to throw Qing Pin to the ground. Qing Pin don't want to come down. Qing Pin was so noisy, especially when he said that Qing Pin was pregnant, so everyone's attention was focused on Guhan. Guhan's face stiffened, and he had to give up on the idea of letting Qing Pin walk. He ran like he was flying towards the clothing building. The clothing building was the most comprehensive and the cheapest place to sell clothes in all of Yuzhang City. Basically, the people of Yuzhang City all bought clothes in the clothing building. Only the citizens or those with some spare money would choose to go to the department store or other ancient clothing store to buy expensive clothes. The clothing building was different from those ancient clothing stores, where all the clothes were hung up and sold by manual labor. The sales model of the clothing building was much more advanced and sci-fi. First of all, the clothing building didn't have different brands or different types of stores, but a uniform cubicle of about 3 square meters. Guhan got a cubicle number at the entrance of the clothing building and was taken to his cubicle by the automatic escalator. The items in the cubicle were very simple. There was a mirror, a curtain, a computer, and nothing else. It looked more like a fitting room than a store that sold clothes. However, this was indeed a place that sold clothes, and it was the place that sold the most types of clothes. Hello, welcome citizen Guhan to the clothing building, sales room 0852. Excuse me, which customer would you like to buy clothes for? Please let the customer who wants to buy clothes stand in front of the mirror. Come down quickly and stand in front of the mirror. I'm buying clothes for you. Guhan urged Qing Pin to get down from him. This time, Qing Pin didn't refuse. There had never been a girl who could resist the temptation of beautiful clothes, not even a lowly. Purchase target has been locked. Child, Height 1.20. Body shape. Clothing selection range has been reduced to children's clothing. Please select Clothing Selection Mode. The active selection type, the brainwave communication type, and the system selection type, the computer said by itself. The so-called active selection mode meant that a large list of clothes would appear in the mirror, and the customer would choose one by one. The brainwave communication mode was to communicate through brainwaves, which was faster and more accurate. The system selection mode meant that the system would actively choose the clothes that best matched the customer's appearance and body shape. System selection mode. Qingpin wasn't human, so the computer couldn't read her brainwave, so the brainwave selection mode was ignored. Guhan had heard from Song Hammer that when he and his sister went shopping in the clothing building, she would spend 5 consecutive hours choosing clothes, so he decisively gave up on active selection. Excuse me, which type of children's clothing do you want to choose? The system continued to ask. Let's start with a princess dress, Guhan said without hesitation. His sister loved to wear princess dresses, so Guhan's first reaction was a princess dress. Understood. System selection begins. The mirror that originally clearly reflected Qingpin's appearance suddenly blurred, and the whole surface of the mirror rippled like water. After a few seconds, the ripples stopped, and Qingpin appeared in the mirror again. However, this time, Qingpin's body in the mirror had an emerald green princess dress. Looking at the real Qingpin, she was still the same, wearing the same clothes, and her face was dirty. Looking at the Qingpin in the mirror, she was wearing a princess dress, like a little princess from The Wizard of Oz. So beautiful. Guhan was stunned. As expected of the clothes chosen by the computer based on Qingpin's appearance, it perfectly complemented Qingpin's lowly, sweet, and clingy princess temperament. Guhan was instantly conquered by the image in the mirror. Qingpin, let's buy this one, okay? Guhan mumbled to himself. Okay. Qingpin likes this dress too. Qingpin jumped in front of the mirror and said happily, Princess dress, serial number 26454, price 256 renminbi. Are you sure you want to buy it? Yes. Do you want to try it on now? Try it on now. Okay. The customer's body is not clean. Do you need cleaning service? This service will cost 10 renminbi. I want to be clean. Guhan looked at the oil stains on Qingpin's face. He definitely could not save the 10 renminbi. The curtain in the cubicle slowly fell, blocking Qingpin from Guhan's sight. Of course, a girl had to be covered when changing clothes. Behind the curtain, a few mechanical hands came out and took off Qingpin's clothes. By the way, the sword lady could take off the clothes she naturally carried when awakening, but they would disappear automatically after being taken off. When the sword lady wanted to wear it, it would automatically appear on her body, just like the clothes of a magical girl. It was very convenient. Then, a large spray was sprayed at Qingpin. This spray was a liquid that could absorb dirt. When it evaporated, it would carry the dirt with it. Therefore, when the spray disappeared, Qingpin turned into the clean and cute child. There was an opening in the wall of the cubicle, and there was a small platform inside. The princess dress that the poor man had just chosen was placed on the platform. The robot automatically took out the princess dress, and the poor man didn't need to do anything during the whole process. It quickly changed the clothes for the poor man. 10 seconds later, the curtain opened again, and the little princess in the mirror appeared in front of Guhan. Chapter 91. In any case, the clothing in the clothing building was very cheap. Considering that he might not have the chance to bring Qingpin there to buy clothes in the future, Guhan immediately went into a shopping mode. There were princess dresses, coats, blouses, coats, jeans, woolen sweaters, lounge chairs, scarves, small suits, overalls, tuxedos, robes, trench coats, leather jackets, sweaters, cardigans, double-breasted sweaters, down jackets, hanfu. In any case, he bought 3 sets of children's clothing for Qingpin, 2 to change, 1 for collection, and 1 for Amway. In the end, looking at the receipt of more than 2,000 yuan, Guhan gave himself a thumbs up for his wits. It was the right decision to run away when he was angry. Otherwise, he would have enough money to buy a princess dress. Let's go. I still have to go to the Swordsman Service Center to settle some paperwork. Looking at the time, it was almost 4 o'clock. According to Guhan's plan, he still had to go to the Swordsman Committee's hall to settle the paperwork to join the ranks of swordsmen. At the same time, he would go to the medical center of the Swordsman Service Center to get his body checked. After confirming that his brain was healthy, he would unlock the game's login restrictions. As he still had to go to 2 places, time was very tight. No, Qingpin wants to buy other clothes. Qingpin slapped Guhan's hand away and continued to stand in front of the mirror. He said to the computer, "Hey, Qingpin wants a very, very cute dress. Hurry up and find it for Qingpin." Understood. Start choosing the cutest dress. After the system received the command, the mirror shook again. After a while, a small and cute crocodile appeared in the mirror. Don't get me wrong. It was not that Qingpin had turned into a crocodile. It was that Qingpin had put on a small and cute crocodile costume. A chubby little face was revealed from the crocodile's wide-open mouth. Guhan, Qingpin was eaten by a crocodile. Qingpin turned around and made a suffocating expression to Guhan. Wow! I can't take it anymore. Guhan squatted down. Oh my god, how could this Qingpin be so cute? My heart was about to explode. Guhan, can you buy this for Qingpin? Qingpin pleaded. Buy. I'll buy it no matter how much it costs. Guhan nodded decisively. He decided to return all the clothes he had bought previously. From now on, he would only let Qingpin wear this crocodile costume. In Guhan's personal terminal, another large sum of money was deducted. He thought that this time, Qingpin would be satisfied and go to the Swordsman Service Center with him, but he never thought that Qingpin would want to buy something else. Hey, Qingpin's feet are so sore. Is there any clothes that can stop Qingpin from walking in the future? Qingpin then asked the computer a very difficult question. Was there any clothes in this world that could stop people from walking? Idiot, how could there be such clothes in this world? Guhan knocked Qingpin on the head. Stop dawdling, I'm almost out of time. Understood, searching for clothes that can stop people from walking, and so, the mirror began to shake, and a strange set of clothes appeared in the mirror. Holy **T, what the hell is this? Guhan expressed that he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. What did I do in my past life to have an ancient sword greatsword mistress? Ji Han's expression was stiff as he walked on the street. Almost everyone around him was looking at Ji Han with astonished, amused, surprised, and amused expressions. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to walk to the core area, Ji Han would rather spend 50 renminbi on a hovercraft taxi than walk on the street. Guhan, you can do it. Walk faster. Guhan's chest was bouncing up and down. This was the main reason why he attracted people's attention. In front of Guhan's chest hung a very cute pouch that looked like a panda, and then a crocodile's head popped out of the pouch. Yes, the last piece of clothing that Qingpin bought that could stop people from walking was a pouch. However, this pouch was not worn by her, but by Guhan. No one knew how the 1.2-meter-tall Qingpin managed to squeeze into this pouch that could only fit a watermelon-sized baby. In any case, Qingpin easily squeezed into the pouch. Just like a baby kangaroo in a mother kangaroo's pocket, he stuck his head out and followed Guhan's footsteps, taking in the world. Hello, please show me your ID, or show me your reason for entering the core area. There were a total of 4 entrances into the core area. 2 of the entrances were for citizens and sword-bearers, 1 was for the general entrance, and the other was for sword-bearers. Apart from these few intersections, if anyone tried to sneak in from any other way, regardless of whether it was a sword wielder or an ordinary human, they would be killed by all kinds of firearms. Firearms were useless against Yuan Shen, but they were still very effective against sword wielder. Originally, Guhan, who had become a sword-bearer, could enter through the special entrance for sword-bearers. However, because he had not gone through formal procedures with the sword-bearer committee and obtained a sword-bearer's ID card, Guhan entered through the general entrance like the last time. Hello, Comrade Guhan, welcome to the core area of Yuzhang City. After the guard with a puffed-up face checked Guhan's personal terminal, he readily let him through. It must be hard to hold it in. Laugh if you want. Guhan said to the guard as he walked into the core area. Immediately, a burst of thunderous laughter erupted behind him. "It's all your fault." Guhan angrily knocked on Qingpin's head. What kind of sin had he committed? Was this still the cold and aloof him? Since it served the elite swordbearers of society, the efficiency of the swordbearers' reception hall was very high. There were no messy procedures such as temporary residence permits, health certificates, clean criminal records, and so on. All Ji Han had to do was swipe his personal terminal on the machine, sign a few documents manually, and demonstrate the process of transforming a poor sword into a sword, and then into a sword mistress. After that, he successfully completed all the procedures and became an honorable swordbearer of an ancient sword as recognized by the law. After these procedures were completed, a staff member led Guhan to a single room and handed him various basic sword-bearer equipment and items distributed by the Sword Committee. These items were an identity chip, a sword-bearer's handbook, a multidimensional bag, an anti-lotus suit, a general scabbard, and a brand new personal terminal for sword-bearers. Among them, the identity chip was used in conjunction with the personal terminal of the sword-bearer. The identity chip was bound to the sword-bearer's DNA, so there was no possibility of forgery. The personal terminal for sword-bearers was a super-personal terminal that was much more powerful than ordinary personal terminals. Apart from all the functions of ordinary personal terminals, it could also connect to the exclusive network of sword-bearers and communicate with other sword-bearers. Another important function was that it came with the world's most complete database of Yuan Ku, which would be automatically updated every week. As long as one typed in Yuan Ku's name or scanned Yuan Ku, one would be able to obtain all the known information about this Yuan Ku, as well as the previous battle records of this Yuan Ku, the number of humans and human sword-bearers he had killed, and so on. At the same time, the personal terminal of sword-bearers also had a global communication function. Unless it was in an area with an S-grade shielding effect or above, the signal could be transmitted to the base city from anywhere in the world. In short, the chances of survival would increase by more than 50% with the personal terminal of sword-bearers when they went on an adventure. The identity chip contained all the information of the sword wielder. Once it was embedded into the personal terminal of the sword wielder, it would be bound to each other. From then on, Ji Han could use the personal terminal of the sword wielder to enter various places that only the sword wielder could enter. The handbook for sword bearers was a very detailed manual that recorded all kinds of knowledge that sword bearers needed to know. It also included the sword bearer's basic constitution, which was a law that was specially used to judge sword bearers. Ordinary laws were ineffective against sword bearers, and only the sword bearer's basic constitution could judge sword bearers. Guhan already had a dimensional bag in the game, and now he had obtained one in real life. The dimensional bag was made of dimensional gems that were left behind in the human world when dimensional rifts were torn apart. It was a storage bag that had the ability to open up a small dimensional space of a few cubic meters. As the number of dimensional rifts continued to decrease, dimensional gems became very rare. It was said that the Sword Committee had already started to consider formulating a law to reclaim the dimensional bags that the government had given to the dead sword bearers for free. It was worth mentioning that the dimensional bag was currently filled with a full set of survival equipment and 3 months' worth of food reserves. The lotus-resistant clothes were made of discarded materials from a swordmaster's failed attempt at forging a sword lady. They were very hard, soft, and close-fitting. They could even isolate water and fire. Even a rat-grade or tiger-grade Yuan Ku would find it hard to break through the defenses of the lotus-resistant clothes. This was the last layer of protection for sword bearers in battle. However, when facing a dragon-grade or above Yuan Ku, it was naturally useless. The final universal scabbard was prepared for a sword lady and was also made of dimensional gems. Because the sword lady didn't need to breathe, she could freely live in the dimensional space. At present, the scabbard was already filled with daily necessities such as a bed, a computer, a movie disc, and so on, so that the sword lady wouldn't be too bored living in the scabbard. In response, Qingpin immediately expressed that Guhan should quickly put the scabbard into the dimensional bag for her. In this lifetime, she was determined to be Guhan's pouch. Other than that, she wouldn't stay in any other place. Guhan said, I want to return it. Where can I return it? Where can I return this cute thing to me? Chapter 92. After completing his task at the Sword Council, Guhan hurried to the medical center of the Swordbearers Service Center to undergo a brain test in an attempt to get permission to re-enter the game. Fortunately, the Swordbearers Service Center was not far from the Sword Council. After completing the registration procedure at the front desk, Guhan unexpectedly bumped into a familiar face when he headed to the test center. It was the reasonable girl who had tested his sword element value back then. "Why is it you again?" The girl was the first to recognize Guhan's face. It seemed like the incident with Guhan had left quite a shadow in her heart. "What a coincidence, it's me. I'm here again." Guhan had a good impression of this muddle-headed girl. If she had not carelessly tested him, he might not have realized that he already had a sword element value of 100 quarks. Qingpin, who was staying in Guhan's pouch, reached out a hand and mimicked Guhan's way of speaking. "What a coincidence, we're here again. Wow. So cute. Is this your daughter?" Girls had no resistance to cute things. When this girl saw Qingpin in his crocodile costume, she wanted nothing more than to rush into Guhan's arms. Don't misunderstand. She did not want to throw herself into his arms. She wanted to snatch Qingpin from Guhan's arms. "She's not my daughter." Guhan's face darkened. "She's my sword mistress." "Sword mistress?" The girl blinked. "You just reached 100 quarks 2 days ago, and now you have a sword mistress? Don't tell me you became a sword bearer the day before yesterday. I'm so jealous. Maya is already at 1,900 quarks, but she still hasn't found her own sword mistress." The girl's eyes were filled with envy. "You're already at 1,900 quarks? You're a famed sword wielder with 100,000 sword elements in-game?" When Guhan heard this number, he was very surprised. This girl was probably only 25 or 26 years old. Without the Sword Maiden's help in battle, she had managed to reach 1900 quarks by relying on the sword essence conversion in the game. It looked like this girl's achievements in the game were extraordinary. At the very least, she was a wielder of a famed sword. "No." The girl blushed. "It's just a treasured sword." A treasured sword. Guhan was even more shocked. Even if it was a sword wielder with 9,999 quarks, according to the upper limit of the conversion rate of 2%, the actual sword element value that was produced should not exceed 200 quarks. In other words, the girl's innate sword element value was at least 1,700 quarks, which was already the standard of the world's top geniuses. Someone on the forum had made a list of the top 10 people with the highest innate sword element value. The first place was naturally Kunzu, who had an innate sword element value of 15,600 quarks. The genius in the 10th place had an innate sword element value of 2,054 quarks, which was only 300 quarks more than the girl. This girl couldn't make it into the top 10, but there was definitely a place for her in the top 100. He did not expect that a random doctor girl he met would be such a genius. When this talent was compared to Guhan's 9 innate sword element value, Guhan had the urge to dig a hole in the ground. However, on the other hand, when this doctor girl saw Guhan, she would also have the urge to dig a hole in the ground. She had 100 quarks of sword element and succeeded on her first attempt at synchronization. On the other hand, Guhan had gone 38 times, but he was still immortal. The difference between them could make a person with a bad mentality break down. Fortunately, this doctor girl was born to be a carefree optimist. "So, what are you doing here today?" the girl asked dryly. She really did not want to see this lucky guy. "I seem to have overused my brain in the game. The system has blocked my account, and I need you to give me a certificate of health for my brain to unlock it." Guhan tapped on the computer with his new personal terminal, and a complete set of medical records appeared on the computer screen. "Overused your brain in the game?" The doctor girl was shocked by Guhan again. The game came with a built-in protection program for the brain. He could break through the game's protection and overuse his brain. She had been a doctor for 3 years, but she had never encountered such a case. After Guhan left, the girl went to check his medical records. The last person who overused his brain in the game had been 15 years ago. Lie on that bed, I'll examine you. This time, Guhan did not need to sit on a chair. Instead, he lay comfortably on a hospital bed. On the other side of the bed was a very traditional CT machine. It was said to be technology from 1,000 years ago, and it had not been updated much until now. After about 3 minutes of torment, according to the CT images, there were no abnormalities in Guhan's brain. Then, she used a gravitational wave scanner to scan the mental image and sword element circulation in his brain. There were still no problems. So, the doctor girl concluded that Guhan's brain had recovered and he could continue playing the game. Then, under Guhan's watchful eyes, the doctor girl gave Guhan a certificate of health for his brain. Through the hospital's dedicated network, she sent it to the game branch of BAT. If everything was normal, the login ban would be lifted tonight. However, even after the ban was lifted, Guhan still could not log into the game. He died in the game, and he had to wait for another 3 days, which was 72 hours, before he could log into the game again. As the doctor girl looked at Qingpin with an infinitely cute expression, Guhan left the sword-bearer service center. It was time to go home. The sky was getting dark. Guhan, are we going home? Qingpin, who was in the pouch, suddenly asked. She sounded a little unhappy. Yes. Where else can we go if not home? Guhan had a bad feeling in his heart. Could it be that Qingpin wanted to? No. Qingpin doesn't want to go home. Qingpin doesn't want to go home. Qingpin wants to eat shredded potatoes when he goes home. Qingpin wants to eat meat. Qingpin wants to eat meat. Sure enough, Qing Pauper was in an uproar just like in the morning. Now she was standing in front of Jiyu Han's chest, jumping around desperately. If it weren't for Jiyu Han's good martial arts foundation and solid horse stance, he would have lost his balance from Qing Pauper's jumping and fallen to the ground. But, Qingpin, I'm out of money. Guhan showed Qingpin the balance in his wallet. It was 12.5 yuan, which showed that Guhan had fallen into a state of extreme poverty. Qingpin's combat power was too strong. Guhan felt that even if he earned 1,000,000 yuan a month, he might not be able to support this little ancestor who loved to eat meat. Guhan, I beg you. Qingpin wants to eat meat. Seeing that jumping around and throwing a tantrum was not going to work, Qingpin decisively changed into a cute expression. Qingpin, I'm really out of money. Guhan was about to cry. Unknown number, 5613-259-7458. Requesting communication connection. Do you want to accept? Just as Qingpin was throwing a tantrum, a communication request appeared on Guhan's personal terminal. Guhan remembered this number. It had called once in the afternoon, but he had hung up on it. Hello, what can I do for you? Guhan patted Qingpin's head, indicating for her to be quiet. Then, he answered the call. Hello, Mr. Guhan. I'm Wen Maiyun. We have an appointment. Do you want to meet later? On the other side of the call, a gentle, charming, and magnetic female voice asked eagerly. Wen Maiyun? I don't know you. Guhan was stunned. He had never heard of this woman's name. No, wait, he seemed to have agreed to meet Song Hammer's mother's friend in the afternoon. Could it be her? You are Song Hammer's mother's friend? The woman who wants to buy my citizenship slot? Yes, it's me, Mr. Guhan. I've already booked a table at Chanel Pork Restaurant. If it's convenient for you, can we meet now? I'm really in a hurry, please. When Maiyun was practically begging on the other end of the call. It really was like wearing out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. Just as he was about to sleep, someone brought him a pillow. You should have said that you had booked a table at Chanel. If you had said so, I wouldn't have been driven crazy by this crazy girl, Qingpin. Oh right, he had to remind Qingpin not to order so much meat like he did in the afternoon. She was a woman, so he couldn't be too ruthless. The so-called coincidences always like to gather together. When Guhan arrived at Chanel, the person who came out to greet Guhan was still the same waitress who had guided him in the afternoon. Master Guhan, you're here again. Welcome, welcome. The waitress didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even though she had earned tens of thousands of RMB in the afternoon, Guhan had cheated others of their money. He was here again in the afternoon. If he dashed and dashed again, then wouldn't she be the one being cheated? But I'm sorry, Master Guhan, you're late again in the afternoon. This time, there aren't many seats left to share. Actually, there were still a few seats that could be shared, but the waitress didn't plan on greeting Guhan anymore. It's fine, it's fine. This time, I have an appointment. May I ask where Miss Wen Meiyun's reservation is? Guhan smiled. He didn't know what the waitress was thinking. Miss Wen Meiyun? Let me check. The waitress checked on her personal terminal. Sure enough, there was a reservation made by Miss Wen Meiyun. It seemed like this dashing and dashing wouldn't happen. The waitress let out a sigh of relief and led Guhan to the table Wen Meiyun had reserved. Guhan glanced at the woman. My goodness, Guhan's state of mind, which had always been as still as water, was directly stirred up by her. This woman didn't have any makeup on and was very plain. Her oval face didn't have any foundation, but it was still very white and tender. Her lips were plump like cherries, and her nose was as firm as a Greek sculpture. Her black hair was tied up in a freehand style. On her crystal forehead, her beautiful eyebrows were gentle and dignified, and her black and white phoenix eyes were as gentle as water. The combination of such beautiful facial features magnified her beauty by more than one-fold. She looked like she was already 35 or 36 years old, but her body and skin were still very delicate and plump. It seemed that every inch of skin could be pinched out of water. Judging from her temperament and dress, this was indeed a charming, beautiful, and impeccable mature woman who was good at maintaining herself. But what didn't match her temperament was that the clothes on her body were very simple. It seemed to be the old style and workmanship of a street stall from 10 years ago. It was hard to imagine that such an upper-class woman would dress so carelessly. It was like the Queen of England suddenly wearing clothes that cost 20 yuan for 3 pieces on Taobao. This woman must have a story. Chapter 93. When Meiyun didn't come alone. Just like Guhan, she also brought a little girl. She was about 13 or 14 years old, and she was staring fiercely at Guhan. This girl's eyebrows were basically carved from the same mold as her mother, and she seemed to be the younger version of Wen Meiyun. When the two of them sat together, they looked like a pair of sisters. You must be Mr. Guhan. Hello, I'm Wen Meiyun. Seeing Ji Yuhan's arrival, Wen Meiyun hurriedly stood up and held Ji Yuhan's hand. What a pair of smooth and delicate hands, the feeling was like a piece of silk to the touch. Hello, I'm Guhan. Thank you for spending so much money today. Guhan squeezed out a smile, hoping that Qingpin would give him some face and not let him spend too much money. Mr. Ji Yuhan must be joking. Oh right, this is my daughter, Xiao Ya. Xiao Ya, hurry up and greet uncle. Compared to Guhan's mother, this girl named Xiao Ya seemed to be especially unyielding. She was responsible for staring fiercely at Guhan, as if Guhan was their father's murderer. This was a little awkward. In order to alleviate the awkwardness, Wen Meiyun quickly called the waiter over to order. However, when it was time to order, Wen Meiyun seemed to be very hesitant. After a long time, she ordered 2 side dishes and a few bowls of rice for herself and her daughter. Then, she handed the menu to Guhan, indicating that Guhan could order whatever he wanted. Let's have 5 pounds of dongpa pork first. After lunch, Qingpin expressed to Guhan that dongpa pork was the best, and the other meats were not as good as dongpa pork. Considering that Qingpin could eat more than 100 pounds in one meal, Guhan only ordered 5 pounds, which was considered to be very considerate of Wen Meiyun. However, when Wen Meiyun heard Guhan say 5 pounds, her entire face instantly turned pale, and she couldn't say anything. Her daughter, Xiao Ya, was about to jump up and do something. Fortunately, Wen Meiyun pressed her down on the chair in time and comforted her softly. It's okay, it's okay. Mommy still has enough money. Guhan saw all of Wen Meiyun's actions. Didn't she say that she still had 1 million? Why did he look so strapped for money? Ms. Wen, it's because Qingpin has a big appetite that she ordered so much. If the deal goes through, the cost of this meal will be included in the purchase fee. If not, I'll have Song Hammer return it to you in a few days. Although Wen Meiyun repeatedly said that it was okay, it was all hers. However, Guhan's words still made Wen Meiyun's expression look much better. Even Xiaoya's gaze wasn't as hostile as before. Soon, 10 pounds of dongpa pork was sent up. When Qingpin saw the meat, she immediately jumped out of Guhan's nursery bag, sat on the table, and ate the meat in big mouthfuls. This foodie, in just one day, has developed such an cultured behavior. Qingpin's foodie behavior made Wen Meiyun and her daughter very surprised, and it also made Guhan feel very embarrassed. He waved his hand. Forget it, let her be alone. We'll discuss our own matters. Okay. No problem. Wen Meiyun nodded repeatedly. She looked for Guhan to solve the citizen problem as soon as possible. I heard from Song Hammer that you have 1 million, Guhan asked first. Wen Meiyun hesitated for a moment, then nodded, indicating that she indeed had 1 million. Guhan continued, well, since you've always planned to buy the citizen quota, then you must know the price of the black market better than me. There are already more than 20 black market purchases at the price of 600,000 each. This is a market where there's a price but there's no market. It's not too much for me to take 2 million from the two of you. However, since you've left, Song Hammer contacted me through his connections. I'll also agree to consider it. It's not impossible to buy 2 of my quotas with 1 million. However, there are some things that I'd like to clarify. Please ask. Meiyun will definitely tell you everything she knows. When Meiyun nodded her head vigorously, the 1 million in Guhan's hands was indeed too cheap. There wouldn't be such a shop like this if she missed this opportunity. Okay, first, I'd like to confirm if you have any bad records and contribution points. I don't want to sell my quota to some riffraff who doesn't contribute to humanity and even destroys human society. Guhan drank a mouthful of water. Understood. When Meiyun used her personal terminal to touch Guhan's personal terminal, and a long list of information was sent to Guhan's personal terminal. Guhan took a look. This Wen Meiyun indeed didn't have any bad records, and her social contribution points had reached 24,000 points. This was a rather large social contribution point. Although it was still quite far from the 500,000 contribution points required to exchange for a free citizenship quota, it still surpassed 95% of the people in society. Okay, there's no problem with the contribution points. Guhan nodded his head. Although this woman had the temperament of a rich lady, her weak nature was also very obvious. Such a woman indeed didn't seem like a woman who would do bad things. Secondly, I'd like to confirm that you really only have 1 million. Also, you can't have things like fixed properties. I don't want to be foolishly nice, Guhan said straightforwardly. He was afraid that this woman would pretend that she only had 1 million left to deceive his sympathy and save 200,000. This wasn't impossible. Understood. When Meiyun touched Guhan's personal terminal again, and Guhan was authorized to enter Wen Meiyun's wallet account. There seemed to be slightly more than 1 million left in it, but it also showed that there were 3 fixed properties under Wen Meiyun's name. However, they were already in the state of being seized and auctioned off. This meant that the bank had already taken back these 3 properties and entered the auction process. The reason for this was probably that the bank had taken them back to pay off the debt. Once the auction ended, these 3 properties would have nothing to do with Wen Meiyun. You guys are bankrupt. Looking at the properties being auctioned, Guhan casually asked. When he saw Wen Meiyun's face stiffen, he didn't ask anymore. Obviously, no one was willing to talk about how they went bankrupt. Third question, and also the last one. I'd like to ask, why do you guys want to go to the core zone? If it's 1 million, you can live happily in the normal zone until your daughter grows up. However, if you spend all the money and enter the core zone, forget about what you eat, they'll ask you where you live. The cheapest house in the core zone is tens of millions of RMB, and the rent is also tens of thousands of RMB per month. You guys might not be able to afford it. Guhan asked the question in his heart. In his opinion, the core zone was just a little safer. There was no need to sacrifice the quality of life for this little bit of safety. Moreover, this was no longer a question of the quality of life, but whether they could survive or not. Because, Wen Maiyun hesitated for a long time, and finally gritted her teeth and answered, "Because there are a few men who desperately pester me and my daughter, wanting me to be their mistress. They have a lot of power. We're already bankrupt, and we can't fight them, so I want to move to the core zone. This way, I can avoid their harassment, and protect my daughter and me." "I see." Guhan nodded. With Wen Meiyun's beauty and the temperament of a mature woman, it would be abnormal if no one harassed her. It seemed that she was indeed a pitiful woman, and he hoped that the core zone could give her the sense of security she wanted. Well, it seems that Miss Wen's situation is indeed very difficult. Although I, Guhan, am not a generous person, I'm not a stingy person either. I promise you, I'll sell the 2 citizenship spots to you for 1 million RMB. Guhan's attitude immediately made Wen Maiyun cry with gratitude. She left her seat, walked to Guhan's side, and held Guhan's hand, saying thank you repeatedly. Other than thank you, she seemed to be unable to find any other words to express the gratitude in her heart. Guhan sent Wen Maiyun back to her seat, and smiled. 1 million is not a cheap price. After you enter the core zone, you still need to hurry up and earn money, or else your days in the core zone might be even worse. If there's any trouble, you can contact me. After all, I was the one who brought you in. I can still help with some small matters. Guhan's warm words made Wen Maiyun feel grateful again. Her daughter, Xiao Ya, looked at Guhan's eyes without hatred. In fact, her eyes were staring at Qingpin, who was gorging himself, as if saliva was about to flow out uncontrollably. "Xiao Ya, stop looking, eat." When Maiyun noticed that her daughter's gaze was not right, and hurriedly told her daughter not to do anything rude, and to eat obediently. However, a bowl of rice covered with some shredded radish and potato really could not satisfy Xiao Ya's appetite. "Mom, I want to eat meat," Xiao Ya said softly. Xiao Ya has not eaten meat for almost a year. Xiao Ya will only eat 1 piece of meat. Just a taste will be enough. When Maiyun heard this, she felt sour. Her daughter was raised as the daughter of a rich family, but now she could not even eat a piece of meat. She did not know how she felt in her heart. Xiao Ya's words were heard by Guhan. This girl was quite pitiful. Guhan thought for a while, then forcefully pulled a piece of dongpa pork from Qingpin's plate that Qingpin had not touched, and put it into the girl's bowl. "Eat, this piece of meat is on brother's treat." "Thank you, brother," the girl said sweetly, then quickly sent the meat into her mouth, chewing it in big mouthfuls. While chewing, she muttered, "The chef here makes dongpa pork so sweet that my teeth are falling off. My mom's cooking is 10,000 times better than his." This child, eating from her own bowl and still trying to sell the chef, serves her right to not eat meat for a year. "Mr. Guhan, my daughter is lacking in manners." When Maiyun showed an apologetic expression to Guhan, but Guhan waved his hand. "Madam Wen, you eat too, this meal is on me, just add it to the 1 million. It's okay, eat, eat." Seeing that the atmosphere between the two sides was getting friendlier, and the story was about to end with a relatively perfect ending, an accident happened. "Boss, it's here. I saw that woman and her daughter approaching here. Wow. You have the money to eat Chanel, but no money to pay the bill. Brothers, follow me, let's kill this shameless woman." A large group of brawny men in disheveled clothes rushed into the Chanel store with wooden sticks and iron rods in their hands, startling all the diners. This group of people's target was very obvious. It was Wen Maiyun. Chapter 94. That's her. That's right, that's her. Long Mai-er's wife. She's Long Mai-er's wife. The group of roughly 10 youngsters holding various kinds of simple sticks and weapons rushed to the table where Guhan and Wen Maiyun were sitting. One of the leaders pointed at Wen Maiyun's head and shouted, "Bitch, you have the money to eat Chanel, but you don't have the money to pay us back. I've finally caught you today. Pay us back, pay us back." The leader of the group was the first to shout. Shortly after, the youngsters following behind him began to return the money, berating Wen Maiyun in an overbearing manner. Wen Maiyun was so scared that her face turned pale. Hugging her daughter, she shrunk to the wall and pressed herself against it. She wished that a hole would suddenly appear on the wall and let her out. "What are you doing? What are you doing? Do you know where this place is? Get out, All of you get out. The manager of the Chanel store reacted very quickly and rushed over with a few security guards armed with electric batons. They were a subsidiary of the world's 8th-ranked sect, the Hengshan sect. Although they might not be able to do as they please in Yuzhang City, they could at least do as they pleased. A bunch of country bumpkins actually dared to behave atrociously in their store. Were they tired of living? There were more than 10 youngsters in the group and every one of them was armed with weapons. They did not know how powerful Chanel's backing was and naturally would not be intimidated by a few security guards. They even thought that the security guards were hired by Wen Maiyun to deal with them. They immediately turned around and glared fiercely at the security guards. Both sides were on the verge of breaking out. Tian Lei, stop right now. All of you, stop. At the crucial moment, an old man who looked to be in his 70s rushed to the side of the group of youngsters and gave a slap to the leader of the group. You little brat, who gave you the permission to cause trouble outside? Don't you know that this is the place of the Hengshan sect? How many lives do you have to cause trouble here? The old man first scolded his own people, and then said to the manager with an old face, Sir, you don't know, this group of young people are used to staying outside the city. They don't understand the rules in the city, they don't know. For the sake of my old face, don't bother with them. They only acted on impulse. They are people from outside the city. Guhan, who was looking on coldly from the side, was shocked. Those who could make a living outside the city, where Yuan Ku was wreaking havoc, were definitely not easy to deal with. However, they rarely had conflicts with the people in the city. This Wen Maiyun looked like someone who had always stayed in the city. How could she have offended someone from outside the city? Humph. Seeing that you are an old man, I will remember this matter for the time being. Now throw all the sticks in your hands into the dustbin and get the hell out of Chanel. Now that the manager had gained face, he was no longer unreasonable. He was not like some novels where the power behind him could not wait to torture the other party's entire family for such a small matter. This won't do. We're leaving. What if this woman runs away? The leader of the group shouted. The old man knocked on his head again. I told you to shut up. Sir, you may not know this, but this kid is owed hundreds of thousands of RMB. He finally caught the person, so he impulsively barged in. You are also a big shot, so you should know the pain of us outsiders. Without this money, we can't even survive. Please be kind and let us do something here. Don't worry. I promise you that we will not do anything, nor will we destroy any property in the store. Otherwise, we will compensate you tenfold. When the old man spoke, the wrinkles on his face were all written together. He looked very miserable. In that case, the manager hesitated for a moment. If it is just a negotiation and not a fight, I can't stop you. But you are not allowed to have so many people here. Only 2 people are allowed to come down. The rest of you, get out. Stay 100 meters away from our store and wait. Don't affect our business. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The old man bowed again and again, then whispered a few words to the rest of the group. They simply left Chanel, leaving the old man and the leader Tian Long behind. Mrs. Long, we meet again. Sorry, I was a bit rash this time. But you have also hidden from us for 3 months. We had no choice but to rush in, the old man said to Wen Maiyun. Although most of the scary-looking young people had left, leaving only the 2 of them, Wen Maiyun still maintained the posture of holding her daughter in the corner. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. Seeing Wen Maiyun's reaction, the old man couldn't help but sigh. He kicked the still angry Wang Tianlei's leg. Kneel. The old man said. What? Wang Tianlei looked at the old man in disbelief. Dad, what did you call me for? Wang Tianlei, a strong man in his 20s, actually called this old man in his 70s dad. Could it be that this old man had a son when he was old? I told you to kneel. After the old man finished speaking, he directly knelt on the ground and scolded Wang Tianlei. Your dad, I have already kneeled. You bastard, why are you still not kneeling? Dad, why do we have to kneel for this stinky woman who owes money and doesn't return it? Fonger still, I told you to kneel. Do you hear me? The old man scolded him heavily. Wang Tianlei had no choice but to follow the old man and kneel in front of Guhan and Wen Maiyun. This scene made Guhan feel very interesting. At first, when this group of people rushed over, Guhan thought they were a group of scum who coveted Wen Meiyun's beauty. Later, he found out that this group of people came to Wen Meiyun to return the money. As the saying goes, it is natural to return the money owed. However, it never occurred to Guhan that this group of people, who obviously had the advantage in strength and morality, actually took the initiative to kneel in front of a weak woman like Wen Meiyun. There must be a lot of things in it. A lot of things that Wen Meiyun didn't tell him just now. In this way, Guhan had to reconsider whether to sell the quota to Wen Meiyun or not. At least before figuring out the actual situation, Guhan didn't plan to sell it. Guhan, what are these two people doing? Why are they kneeling on the ground? Do they owe us meat? Little crocodile Qingpin, who stuffed the last piece of dongpa meat into his mouth, found that there were two people kneeling beside him. He curiously asked Guhan, "Oh, I was wondering where Mrs. Long was hiding. Boss Long's body is not cold yet, and you did this kind of thing. You really made Boss Long proud." Wang Tianlei, who was forced to kneel on the ground by his father, was in a bad mood. After seeing the existence of Guhan, his stomach was suddenly full of jealousy, and he spurted it towards Guhan. "Believe it or not, I will cut off your mouth." Jiyu Hansi replied slowly, but the killing intent in his tone made Yi Tianlong involuntarily shudder. This person has seen blood on his body. This kind of person can't be provoked. Wang Tianlei's experience of living outside the city for more than 10 years told him this fact. "Don't talk nonsense, Mr. Jiyu, and I didn't do that kind of dirty thing you think, and I didn't do anything wrong to my husband." When Meiyun finally no longer remained silent, she will not allow her reputation to be insulted. "Mrs. Long, you are finally willing to speak. That's good, there is no evidence. I, Wang Tianlei, will not say anything. Now, I, Wang Tianlei, kneel in front of you. Do a good deed and return the 800,000 yuan you owe us. I will kowtow to you 10 times, okay? My sister Feng is still waiting for this money to save her life, 800,000 more." When Meiyun was also angry, but in her anger, she looked especially weak. "Didn't I already give you 600,000? Now all of my husband's property has been sold, the 3 properties have also been repossessed by the bank. Where do I have 800,000 yuan to give you?" When Meiyun clearly still had 1 million yuan in her card, something that Guhan could clearly see. Although Guhan did not point this out, his evaluation of Wen Meiyun in his heart had worsened. "Mrs. Long, it's true that you gave us 600,000 yuan, but that 600,000 yuan is still not enough to pay for the lives of my 3 brothers. Now, my sister is lying in the hospital, and she urgently needs to have surgery to regenerate her limbs. If this drags on, my sister's limbs will never recover." As he spoke, a few hot tears rolled down from the eyes of the man, Wang Tianlei. After a series of conversations between Wang Tianlei and Wen Meiyun, Guhan gradually restored the truth of the matter. It turned out that Wen Meiyun's husband, Long Mai had opened up a pork breeding base outside the city, and had even hired Wang Tianlei and the other unafraid outsiders to guard the equipment and domestic pigs in the breeding base. In the first few years, everything was peaceful, and Long Mai had even earned quite a bit of money, allowing Wen Meiyun and her daughter to live a happy life. However, there are unpredictable winds and clouds in the sky, and people have their ups and downs. Opening a breeding base outside the city was originally an extremely risky matter. Although the swordbearers within a 50 kilometers radius of the city had more or less cleared out the Yuan coup, there would still be the occasional Yuan coup. Occasionally, there would be Yuan coup who would sneak into the vicinity of the city and attack the humans working outside the city. Therefore, these outsiders were using their lives to exchange for money. When Long Mai had first opened up the breeding base, she had specially considered this point. Therefore, she had specially taken out a huge loan from the bank to purchase extremely advanced unmanned breeding security equipment. With only 5 people, they were able to control the entire operation of the pig farm. 1 year ago, due to the equipment malfunctioning, Long Mai had brought the technical specialist sent by the equipment manufacturer to the breeding base to repair the equipment. However, a sad thing happened. While the equipment was being repaired, Long Mai Er's breeding base was attacked by a group of Yuan Ku. When the nearby swordbearers received the alarm and rushed to the breeding base, Long Mai Er and 3 other people were already corpses on the spot. There was also a girl in charge of cooking, who had both her hands and feet eaten by Yuan Ku. Fortunately, she did not die. The equipment in the breeding base was also destroyed into a complete mess by Yuan Ku, turning into a pile of scrap metal. Due to the fact that the equipment was bought with a loan from the bank, all of Long Mai Er's assets were sealed off by the bank on the same day. After an auction, all of it was used to repay the bank loan, leaving only roughly 100,000 yen in Wen Meiyun's hands. However, this was only enough to repay the bank loan. The compensation for the 3 dead outsiders still fell on Wen Meiyun's head. Wen Meiyun gathered the things that she had brought from her family and the money in Long Mai Er's little treasury together, leaving a total of 1,600,000 yen. The death of the 3 outsiders was easy to deal with. With a compensation of 200,000 yen per person recommended by the council, Wen Meiyun had already paid 600,000 yen to the families of the 3 dead people in just a few days. However, the troublesome one was the one who had her limbs bitten off, Yi Tianlong's younger sister. Wang Tianlei insisted on giving his sister a surgery to regenerate her limbs. It was a very expensive surgery fee. 800,000 yuan was just the surgery fee, and the post-treatment fees would add up to at least 1,000,000 yuan. Therefore, Yi Tianlong only asked Wen Meiyun for 800,000 yuan, which was still a bit of a conscience. After knowing the entire story, Guhan no longer had any interest in Wen Meiyun's involvement in this matter. He clearly still had 1,000,000 yen in his card. Could it be that the 2 citizenship quotas could not compare to the limbs of a lady? Madam Wen, please take your time to deal with these matters. Let's end the deal between us. This meal is on me. Goodbye. Guhan carried Qing Pin back into the pouch on his chest, before swaggering off. How can this be? Seeing Guhan leave without even turning his head back, Wen Meiyun's entire body softened as she slumped into her seat. Hey! Song Hammer, lend me 10,000 renminbi. I'll return it to you after I've sold all the equipment in the game. Guhan walked away in a carefree and unrestrained manner. However, he appeared to be extremely helpless when it came to settling the bill. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.